New objects have been streaming into view as 3I Atlas draws closer to the Martian system, a moment that has electrified astronomers, mission planners, and space enthusiasts alike. The spacecraft, which has been on its long voyage through interplanetary space, now approaches one of the most iconic worlds in our solar neighborhood. As it nears Mars, its instruments are registering a proliferation of new objects, signatures, and phenomena that seem to grow more numerous with every passing day. The multiplication of these discoveries is not just a matter of quantity, but of profound implication. Each object potentially rewriting some fragment of our understanding of Mars and its surrounding space. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more exclusive news. The approach to Mars has always carried with it a certain gravitas. Humanity has long looked to the red planet as a place where science and imagination collide. And now 3I Atlas is threading the needle between mystery and revelation. The phrase "new objects are multiplying" captures both the literal expansion of the catalog of bodies in Mars's vicinity and the figurative expansion of possibility. These objects may be natural, fragments of asteroid debris, or elusive moonlets captured by Mars's uneven gravity. Or they may be something far more enigmatic, features that challenge conventional expectations of what should be found orbiting a terrestrial planet. Their multiplication suggests not a static world, but a dynamic and restless system, alive with motion and waiting to be charted. One of the most engaging aspects of this moment is the convergence of trajectory and timing. As 3I Atlas barrels toward Mars, the geometry of its vantage point creates an ideal window for discovery. From Earth, many of these small, faint, or irregular objects remain invisible, lost in the background glow of interplanetary dust or drowned out by the comparative brightness of Mars itself. But the spacecraft's proximity changes everything. Equipped with sensors designed to peer deeply into the shadows, measure subtle shifts of light, and capture high-speed variations in movement, 3I Atlas is revealing a hidden theater of activity. What once seemed empty is now crowded. What was thought to be familiar is now strange. The multiplying objects may range in scale from pebble-sized fragments drifting in tenuous arcs to kilometer-wide bodies that could qualify as new moons. Some may be transient visitors, asteroids nudged by gravitational currents into temporary capture around Mars, destined eventually to swing away and continue their wandering through the solar system. Others might be more permanent, faint companions to Mars that have gone unnoticed until now, their existence hinted at but never confirmed. The excitement lies in the possibility that Mars has a richer retinue of satellites than Phobos and Deimos alone. If true, the textbook diagrams of Mars with its two tiny moons would need to be redrawn, and the dynamics of Martian orbit reconsidered. Every new object carries a story. Each rock or fragment is a relic of solar system history, a piece chipped from collisions that took place millions or billions of years ago. Some may be leftovers from the violent birth of Phobos and Deimos, debris that never coalesced into stable bodies. Others might trace their lineage to the asteroid belt, waylaid and tugged into Martian orbit by chance encounters. And still others might represent something altogether unanticipated, enigmatic clusters that challenge neat categorization. The multiplication of these objects signals the unveiling of Mars as a more intricate crossroads of orbital mechanics than was once believed. The implications ripple outward. For planetary defense, the discovery of new near-Mars objects matters deeply. Every fragment tracked by 3I Atlas adds to a catalog of potential collision hazards, not only for Mars, but for future spacecraft navigating its neighborhood. For exploration, it enriches the environment that astronauts will someday enter. Any crewed mission to Mars will have to contend with these bodies, whether as potential hazards or as opportunities. Imagine astronauts redirecting their course to rendezvous with one of these newfound objects, scooping up a sample that has traveled untouched for eons. Such encounters would offer science of incalculable value. The multiplication of objects also provokes new thinking about Mars's gravitational field. Mars is smaller than Earth with a less commanding pull, but its lumpy, irregular distribution of mass, shaped by ancient impacts, volcanic provinces, and deep crustal anomalies, creates a gravitational environment prone to quirks. Objects can be caught in its sway, held in looping orbits that are unstable yet long-lived. The fact that 3I Atlas is finding so many suggests that Mars may be a natural collector, sweeping up debris from passing asteroids and comets. Each new body adds another piece to the puzzle of how Mars interacts with its cosmic surroundings. From the perspective of planetary science, the multiplying objects expand the frontier of Martian study. It is not only the planet itself, the dust storms, canyons, volcanoes, and polar caps that deserve attention, but also the halo of material that encircles it. The Martian system is revealed as more than a planet and two moons. It is an archipelago of bodies, large and small, all moving in a dance choreographed by gravity and chance. Understanding this system requires patience, data, and imagination. 3i Atlas brings all three to bear, transforming each flicker of detection into a line of inquiry. Speculation grows as to what lies ahead. As the spacecraft continues its approach, will the multiplication of objects continue exponentially, or will it plateau once a certain observational limit is reached? The pace of discovery suggests there may be many more yet unseen, awaiting the exact alignments of light, angle, and proximity that only the coming weeks will provide. Each day nearer to Mars sharpens the instrument's focus and increases the odds of finding still more companions. This anticipation creates a sense of momentum, as though discovery itself is accelerating along with the spacecraft. The emotional charge of this moment cannot be overstated. For centuries, Mars has been a beacon of curiosity. To imagine that new worlds, however small, are revealing themselves in its orbit as we draw near speaks to the inexhaustibility of exploration. Each object is a surprise, a reminder that space refuses to be fully mapped, that there will always be shadows where the unknown hides. The multiplication of objects evokes a sense of abundance rather than scarcity, as though the cosmos, far from empty, is teeming with overlooked presences. Technological triumph also underpins the discoveries. 3. Atlas is not merely a vessel moving through space. It is an observatory of exquisite precision, a collection of sensors and processors engineered for this very purpose. Its ability to distinguish faint glimmers against the backdrop of stars, to measure trajectories with astonishing accuracy, and to transmit this wealth of information back across millions of kilometers speaks to the culmination of decades of progress in engineering and vision. Without such a machine, these multiplying objects would remain phantoms, invisible to human knowledge. The narrative of Mars is thus enriched. For generations, its story has been told through telescopes, probes, landers, and rovers. Each step has brought Mars closer to us, from a distant reddish dot to a world mapped in detail, its valleys, plains, and craters etched into our collective imagination. Now the story gains a new chapter, the revelation of a crowded sky around Mars, an arena of objects whose presence complicates and deepens our picture of this neighbor. Where once the Martian system was drawn simply, it now unfolds with complexity. The multiplication of objects carries another implication. It forces reflection on how planetary systems as a whole are structured. Earth has one dominant moon, but countless artificial satellites and occasional temporary asteroid captures. Jupiter and Saturn host swarms of moons large and small, many only recently discovered. Mars, with its meager 2 moons, has often seemed sparse by comparison. But if Mars harbors a cloud of smaller companions, then the spectrum of planetary systems widens, showing that even modest planets may surround themselves with intricate assemblages of bodies. This revelation bridges the gap between the planetary giants with their retinues and the smaller worlds with seemingly little in tow. As 3i Atlas continues its approach, excitement builds not only in the scientific community but also among the broader public. There is something inherently thrilling about multiplying discoveries, about the sense that every moment brings fresh revelation. The closer the spacecraft gets, the more detailed the detections become, the richer the catalog grows. Each press release, each image, each charted trajectory feeds into a swelling wave of anticipation. What will be found next? How many objects are out there waiting to be counted? The implications extend further still. In the long arc of space exploration, these discoveries may influence future mission design. Engineers planning orbiters, landers, and crewed missions to Mars will need to account for a busier environment than expected. Trajectories must be plotted with greater precision, shielding must be evaluated against potential debris, and mission timelines may adapt to take advantage of opportunities presented by accessible new bodies. Exploration is never just about what is found, but also about how what is found changes the path ahead. Even at this stage, before full arrival, the multiplying objects provoke philosophical questions. They challenge assumptions about emptiness and isolation in space. They remind us that even a seemingly barren region can, under the right scrutiny, bloom with activity. They suggest that the universe is layered with hidden structures, awaiting the convergence of technology and curiosity to be revealed. Each new object around Mars becomes a testament to this truth. Discovery is not exhausted, and wonder is never finite. As 3I Atlas draws ever closer to Mars, the multiplication of new objects surrounding the red planet is not simply an astronomical curiosity. It is unfolding into a transformative moment in the story of exploration. The widening catalog of these objects hints at layers of Martian history and celestial processes that have never been visible before. Each detection adds texture to the environment surrounding Mars, expanding the scope of what must be considered when we speak about this world and its place in the solar system. The spacecraft's instruments are acting like lanterns in a cavernous space, illuminating details that had previously gone unseen, and what is revealed is far more abundant than many had expected. The closer it travels, the denser the sky appears, as though the approach itself is peeling back veils of invisibility to show a hidden architecture. The multiplication of objects introduces a fresh set of dynamics that stretch far beyond the immediate act of detection. One critical dimension is the way these new presences can serve as markers of Mars's gravitational influence. Every captured fragment is a consequence of Mars's ability to tug, hold, or deflect matter passing through its sphere of influence. For decades, scientists have modeled this sphere with simplified assumptions, treating the red planet as a predictable body in terms of how it interacts with the solar system's debris. But now, 3I Atlas is revealing a living laboratory in which those assumptions are tested against reality. Some of the newfound objects follow elongated orbits, stretching them into paths that hint at temporary captures lasting only decades or centuries. Others circle in surprisingly stable loops, defying expectations of rapid ejection. Together, they paint a picture of Mars not as a quiet planet, but as a complex gravitational player, shaping its local cosmos in ways we had only theorized. For the spacecraft itself, the multiplying objects become both a gift and a challenge. They enrich the mission with data far beyond the initial expectations, turning a planetary approach into an encounter with an entire system of phenomena. Yet they also demand vigilance, as every new detection is a potential hazard. Navigators must chart safe pathways, accounting for objects too faint to have been included in older models of Martian space. This process is dynamic, requiring continual recalibration as more detections pour in. It is as though 3I Atlas has stepped into a maze where the walls are not fixed but multiplying around it, each new wall requiring awareness and adjustment. This tension between opportunity and risk is one of the defining qualities of space exploration, and here it manifests in dramatic form. The nature of the objects themselves holds immense intrigue. Some appear to be loose agglomerations, clusters of material that are more fragile than solid rock. These clumps could be the remnants of past collisions in Mars's vicinity, where two bodies shattered against each other, leaving behind swarms of debris that have lingered ever since. Others bear the characteristics of denser asteroid fragments, their reflective properties suggesting iron-rich compositions or carbonaceous surfaces. The diversity hints at a broad variety of origins, each object representing a journey from somewhere else in the solar system before being caught by Mars. This cosmopolitan mix makes the region around the planet a microcosm of the wider solar environment, a gallery of celestial relics brought together by gravity's impartial hand. One of the more compelling implications of the multiplying objects is the possibility that some of them may be remnants of Mars itself. Long ago, massive impacts reshaped the planet, carving out the colossal basin of Hellas, raising the highlands of Tharsis, and scattering ejecta across its surface and beyond. Some of that material may have achieved escape velocity, but then lingered within Mars's gravitational reach, eventually settling into orbits as small satellites. If even a portion of the new detections represent such fragments, they are not merely visitors but pieces of Mars that were cast into space and preserved in orbital limbo. Studying them could therefore yield insights into Martian geology without even setting foot on the surface, a kind of orbiting archive of the planet's violent history. As the list of objects grows, so too does the necessity of classification. Scientists are developing frameworks to sort the multiplying detections into categories, temporary captures, stable satellites, debris clusters, and possible Martian origin fragments. Each classification carries with it distinct implications for the past and future of Mars. Temporary captures reveal the ongoing interaction between Mars and the wider solar system, showing how frequently the planet exchanges material with the cosmic environment. Stable satellites suggest that Mars may have a more intricate moon system than previously believed, one that had simply escaped detection until now. Debris clusters serve as evidence of collisions, while Martian origin fragments connect directly to planetary geology. This act of sorting transforms the multiplying chaos into structured understanding, though the boundaries remain fluid as new evidence constantly arrives. Beyond the scientific and navigational implications, the sheer abundance of new objects shifts the cultural imagination of Mars. For generations, the image of Mars has been stark: a dusty red sphere with two small moons, a lonely world hanging in space. The discovery of a populated orbital environment alters this perception. Mars is no longer lonely but surrounded, its skies crowded with companions large and small. This reimagining has subtle but powerful consequences for how people think about Mars as a destination. It is not just a barren planet waiting to be reached, it is part of a living system, a node in a web of activity that stretches across space. This enriched image may influence not only science fiction, but also the narratives that drive public engagement with exploration. As the multiplication continues, it inevitably leads to questions about sustainability of exploration in such an environment. Future spacecraft, orbiters, and crewed missions will need to take into account the possibility of encountering these bodies. The more numerous they are, the greater the probability of close passes or impacts, however small. Shielding, navigation protocols, and contingency planning all grow in importance. Yet at the same time, these objects also present opportunities, potential sources of raw material for in-situ resource utilization. Instead of hauling everything from Earth, explorers might one day mine small satellites or debris clusters, extracting water, metals, or other resources to support human presence in Martian space. Thus, what begins as a navigational hazard may evolve into an asset, part of the infrastructure of interplanetary living. The multiplying objects also provide a natural laboratory for studying the boundary between order and chaos in orbital dynamics. Mars's gravitational field interacts with the pull of the Sun, the influence of Jupiter, and the subtle drag of its thin atmosphere at higher altitudes. The result is a turbulent environment where orbits can shift dramatically over time. Some objects may linger for millennia before being ejected, while others may spiral inward and collide with Mars or its moons. Tracking this interplay allows scientists to refine models not only of Mars, but also of other planetary systems. The lessons learned here can inform our understanding of exoplanetary environments, where planets may similarly collect and shed companions in unpredictable ways. For 3I Atlas itself, the act of discovery is cumulative. Each new object detected enhances the precision of its instruments, sharpening algorithms that are trained on real data. The spacecraft learns, in a sense, to see better as it goes, adapting to the environment it is revealing. This feedback loop of detection and refinement accelerates the pace of discovery, producing an exponential growth in the catalog of objects. The closer the spacecraft gets to Mars, the more potent this loop becomes, as proximity enhances resolution and resolution feeds discovery. This virtuous cycle is one reason the multiplication of objects feels so dramatic. It is not merely a matter of finding more, but of accelerating into abundance. The human dimension of these discoveries is equally significant. Teams on Earth are racing to process the influx of data, working long hours to confirm detections, calculate orbits, and assess implications. Every new signal brings a flurry of activity, as analysts cross-check findings and theorists spin out models. The sense of collective endeavor is palpable, as though humanity itself is reaching out through the spacecraft's sensors, peering into the Martian system with fresh eyes. This moment encapsulates the essence of exploration, the merging of technology, intellect, and curiosity in the pursuit of knowledge. As 3I Atlas approaches its destination, one cannot help but wonder how many more objects remain hidden, waiting for the perfect alignment of conditions to reveal themselves. The sky around Mars, once thought simple, has become layered and complex. and yet it may still hold surprises. Each detection pushes the boundary of the known, expanding the perimeter of human understanding one orbit at a time. The multiplication of objects is not just a cataloging exercise. It is the unfolding of a narrative that stretches backward into Mars's past and forward into the future of exploration. It sets the stage for the next phase of inquiry, inviting deeper questions about origins, interactions, and possibilities yet to be imagined. The approach of 3I Atlas has thus become a watershed moment, not because of a single dramatic discovery, but because of the cumulative effect of many. The multiplying objects transform the Martian system into a richer, more dynamic theater, one that challenges old assumptions and sparks new visions. And even as the spacecraft continues to close the distance, the sense remains that the story is only beginning, that Mars and its newly revealed companions are preparing to disclose still more layers of their secrets, awaiting the next chapter of attention and wonder. As 3I Atlas continues its careful glide toward Mars, the awareness of multiplying objects surrounding the red planet builds into something almost palpable, a presence that grows with every data transmission sent back across the void. The spacecraft, a culmination of vision, mathematics, and human persistence, has become the bridge through which these objects are now entering the field of human thought. The very act of drawing closer is producing revelations that demand interpretation. Mars is no longer a static endpoint in the mission plan, but a dynamic environment, revealing a mosaic of interactions too subtle to be glimpsed from Earth. Every orbiting fragment, every trace of material caught within Mars's sphere of influence, becomes a clue in an unfolding mystery that is far larger than anyone anticipated. The sheer quantity of new objects challenges the sense of scale that had previously defined Mars. Where once the red planet was imagined primarily in terms of its surface features, dust storms, volcanoes, valleys, and polar caps, now the focus is drawn outward into the surrounding sky. This orbital environment is proving to be far richer than the simplified picture of a planet with two moons. The multiplication of bodies, whether small asteroidal fragments, clusters of fine material, or more coherent satellites, reshapes the way Mars is conceptualized. It is not just a world with a thin atmosphere and a barren surface. It is a hub in a swirling system of orbital dynamics, an anchor for objects that circle it in both fleeting arcs and enduring paths. One of the most striking elements of this development is the variety of distances at which these new objects are being discovered. Some hover close to the planet, barely above the tenuous upper layers of its atmosphere, where orbital lifetimes are limited and decay is inevitable. Others are found much farther out, on the edges of Mars's gravitational domain, where the competing influence of the Sun constantly threatens to strip them away. This spread reveals the layered nature of Mars's gravitational architecture, showing that it is not merely a matter of objects being present, but of them inhabiting distinct niches within the system. Some orbits appear precarious, set to unravel within centuries, while others suggest a stability that could last as long as Mars itself. The discovery of so many bodies occupying these varied regimes demonstrates that Mars is continually capturing, retaining, and losing companions, a planet engaged in constant negotiation with the forces around it. The scientific promise embedded in this multiplication is immense. Every one of these bodies offers an independent data point for testing models of orbital mechanics under the specific conditions of Mars's gravity. The interplay between these small satellites and the planet's uneven mass distribution, shaped by colossal volcanoes, impact basins, and hidden subsurface anomalies, is a living experiment in celestial physics. By charting the paths of these new companions, scientists will be able to refine their maps of Mars's gravitational field, revealing subtle irregularities that in turn point to structures deep within the planet. Thus, the multiplying objects are not simply curiosities. They are tools that allow Mars to disclose its interior indirectly, its secrets written into the motion of bodies that circle it. The variety of compositions hinted at by 3I Atlas's instruments is equally compelling. Some objects reflect light in ways that suggest metallic cores, dense remnants of ancient collisions. Others appear darker, cloaked in carbon-rich materials more typical of primitive asteroids. Still others give indications of porous, dusty structures, fragile aggregates that might disintegrate under the slightest stress. This diversity tells a story of multiple origins. Some of these companions are likely fragments of Mars itself, torn free by ancient impacts and never fully departing the planet's grasp. Others are visitors from elsewhere, asteroids nudged from their paths and temporarily ensnared. Together, they turn the Martian orbital environment into a crossroads, a place where materials from different parts of the solar system converge. For exploration, the multiplication of objects is both complication and opportunity. Future orbiters and landers will have to navigate a busier environment, plotting trajectories with unprecedented precision to avoid collisions. Even tiny fragments, moving at orbital velocities, represent serious hazards to spacecraft hardware. But the same abundance transforms the Martian system into a natural quarry of resources. Water-bearing objects could be harvested to supply future missions, providing fuel and life support consumables without the staggering expense of hauling them from Earth. Metallic fragments could one day be mined for structural materials, supporting construction in orbit or on the Martian surface. What is today a scientific revelation could tomorrow be the foundation of a Martian economy, rooted in the raw abundance of these newly discovered companions. The multiplying objects also provoke a reconsideration of how planetary systems evolve. Until now, Mars was often considered a minimalist example, possessing only its 2 irregular moons compared to the dozens or even hundreds orbiting the giants of the outer solar system. Yet what 3I Atlas is uncovering suggests that Mars has been vastly underestimated. Instead of being sparse, it is simply subtler. Its companions too faint and too small to have been cataloged until now. This challenges the binary division between moon-rich and moon-poor planets. Mars may represent an intermediate category, one that shows how even terrestrial worlds can sustain complex orbital ecosystems under the right conditions. The implication is that elsewhere, around exoplanets orbiting distant stars, similar intermediate systems may be the norm rather than the exception. In terms of cultural resonance, the discoveries reawaken the romance of exploration. For centuries, Mars has held humanity's imagination, but it was thought that its surprises lay primarily on the ground, in the dry riverbeds, the dust devils, and the ice caps. Now the surprises are in the sky, where multiplying companions orbit unnoticed until the moment a spacecraft like 3I Atlas brings them into view. This unexpected abundance redefines Mars in the public imagination, turning it into a world with a crowded sky rather than an isolated globe. Such transformations in perception matter deeply because they shape the narratives that drive support for exploration. Mars becomes not just a target for landing, but a realm to be navigated, explored, and lived within. The role of 3I Atlas itself is central in this unfolding drama. More than a passive observer, the spacecraft is actively rewriting the way Mars is perceived. Its sensors, designed to detect faint signals against a noisy background, are proving to be sharper and more effective than many had anticipated. Each detection is a triumph not just of Mars's richness, but of human engineering, which has made it possible to distinguish such subtleties at interplanetary distances. The spacecraft has become an extension of human perception, a pair of eyes that can see what Earth-bound telescopes could not. The multiplying objects are therefore a testament to both the generosity of the cosmos and the ingenuity of the humans who designed the machine that could reveal it. The pace of discoveries creates a sense of acceleration that mirrors the spacecraft's own approach. Each day closer to Mars increases the clarity of the instruments, sharpening images, refining trajectories, and amplifying the number of detections. The multiplication seems almost exponential, as though proximity itself were causing reality to unfold more rapidly. This momentum builds anticipation, suggesting that what has been discovered so far may only be the beginning. The threshold of revelation lies just ahead, where closeness will unlock vistas unimaginable at greater distances. The multiplying objects are a promise of further abundance, a prelude to discoveries yet to come. On Earth, the teams receiving the data are immersed in a flood of information that challenges their capacity to process it. Orbital models must be updated constantly, catalogs expanded daily, and theories adjusted in real time. The excitement is matched by intensity as scientists and engineers collaborate across continents to keep pace with what 3I Atlas is uncovering. This human effort mirrors the multiplication of objects themselves, Where Mars is suddenly surrounded by a host of companions, the mission teams are surrounded by a host of questions, each demanding attention. The sense of discovery is communal, a shared experience unfolding simultaneously in labs, control rooms, and observatories around the world. The multiplying objects also suggest practical lessons for future mission planning. Every spacecraft that will one day orbit Mars, from robotic explorers to crewed vessels, must take this denser environment into account. Traditional assumptions about Martian orbits, which treated them as relatively uncluttered, are no longer sufficient. Engineers must now incorporate models that factor in dozens or even hundreds of small bodies, each with its own trajectory and potential influence. This recalibration has immediate consequences for safety and long-term consequences for the architecture of exploration. Mars, it turns out, is not simply a planet to be reached, but a system to be navigated, a place where caution and opportunity are woven together. The multiplying discoveries also raise profound questions about time. Many of these objects are transient, their orbits unstable, destined either to crash into Mars or to be flung back into interplanetary space. Others may have been present for millions of years, circling unnoticed while life on Earth rose and evolved. This mixture of fleeting and enduring presences adds depth to the narrative. The Martian system is not static but in flux, an arena where companions come and go across timescales far longer than human history. To witness this flux in action is to gain a humbling perspective on the rhythms of the cosmos, where permanence and impermanence are entwined. The question of what remains hidden still looms large. If so many objects have already been found as the spacecraft approaches, how many more lie waiting in the shadows, too small, too faint, or too irregular to be detected until the spacecraft is even closer? The possibility of further multiplication seems endless, an open horizon of discovery that stretches ahead with no clear endpoint. This sense of openness gives the mission an almost narrative quality, a story that unfolds with each new chapter but never truly concludes. Mars, surrounded by its multiplying companions, continues to surprise, offering revelation after revelation as 3I Atlas narrows the distance. And still the spacecraft moves forward, steady and relentless, a traveler crossing the final span of interplanetary space. Its sensors remain alert, its instruments poised, its memory banks filling with the signatures of objects no one expected to find. The multiplication continues, expanding the catalog of Mars's companions, complicating its story, and enriching its role in human imagination. The discoveries show no sign of abating, and the sense grows that what has been revealed so far is only a glimpse of what awaits. The sky around Mars is not yet fully known, and 3I Atlas has only begun to tell its secrets. The approach is still underway, the revelation still multiplying, the horizon of discovery still wide open, waiting to be carried forward into the next stage of exploration. As the steady passage of 3I Atlas through interplanetary space brings it into the deepening presence of Mars, the sense of unfolding abundance intensifies. The multiplying objects identified in orbit are not a closed set, but a continuously expanding reality. Each transmission back to Earth contains more than the last, revealing orbital tracks, faint signals, and unexpected reflections. The story of Mars, which for centuries had been dominated by the surface, the dust storms, the canyons, the volcanoes, is now migrating outward into the orbital envelope that surrounds the planet. It is here in this newly illuminated region that countless small bodies mark the true character of Mars as a participant in the restless choreography of the solar system. What makes this moment so striking is the contrast between expectation and reality. For so long, the simplicity of Mars's known moons, Phobos and Deimos, was assumed to define the whole system. Scientists had treated them as lonely outliers, two enigmatic but solitary companions that orbited in silence. Yet now 3I Atlas demonstrates that the environment is far from silent. The closer it comes, the louder the chorus of objects grows, each new detection a voice joining in a collective complexity. This overturns an intellectual habit that has endured for decades, forcing a new paradigm in which Mars is not accompanied sparsely but richly, its gravitational well encircled by an array of bodies that speak of history, interaction, and cosmic chance. The diversity of orbital patterns revealed so far carries significant weight. Some of the bodies travel in near circular loops, stable paths that suggest long-term residence. Others trace eccentric ellipses, indicating that they are temporary guests, caught for a while before being released. A few seem to wander in chaotic trajectories, perturbed by both Mars's irregular pull and the tug of the Sun. This mixture creates a layered orbital society where permanence and impermanence coexist, and where every object has its own story written in its motion. For scientists, these orbits act as natural experiments. By tracking how they shift, they can infer the hidden details of Mars's gravitational field and the external influences that shape it. The multiplication of objects also reflects the dynamic processes at play in the solar system at large. Mars is positioned between the asteroid belt and Earth, a crossroads where material is constantly in motion. Asteroids on errant paths may skim close enough to be tugged into orbit, while fragments of older collisions may have lingered around Mars for millions of years. This environment is not static. It is a constant negotiation between gravitational forces, impacts, and solar influences. The presence of so many objects indicates that Mars has been an active participant in this negotiation, a planet that both receives and discards material as the solar system continues its grand circulation. One compelling dimension of the discoveries lies in their potential connection to Mars's violent past. The red planet's surface still bears the scars of titanic impacts, basins large enough to engulf continents, craters that stretch for hundreds of kilometers. Each impact would have sent material blasting into space, much of it escaping into solar orbits, but some caught in Mars's gravity. Over eons, that debris may have sorted itself into clusters of small companions quietly circling overhead. If 3I Atlas confirms such origins, then the sky around Mars becomes a museum of its history, each object a fragment of a cataclysm long since past. These companions would then represent direct records of ancient Mars, more pristine than rocks eroded by surface weathering, still carrying the mineral signatures of the crust and mantle. Equally fascinating are the subtle interactions among the objects themselves. As the catalog grows denser, the possibility of collisions, mutual perturbations, and exchanges of material becomes evident. Some objects may exist as clusters rather than single bodies, evidence of past breakups where gravitational tugs fractured larger pieces into swarms of fragments. These swarms, while fragile, can endure surprisingly long, their motions held together by the same gravitational balance that sustains them in orbit around Mars. Observing these dynamics in real time gives researchers a rare chance to study the mechanics of small body interactions without leaving the Martian neighborhood. The proliferation of objects also underscores the complexity of planning future missions. Every new discovery adds another variable to be accounted for in orbital trajectories, lander entries, and communications relays. The orbital space around Mars, once thought to be sparse, is now revealed as crowded, meaning that future spacecraft must move through it with precision and care. This complication, however, is matched by opportunity. The new companions could be harnessed as stepping stones for exploration, their resources tapped for fuel, oxygen, or structural materials. Instead of being obstacles, they could become partners, allowing human presence at Mars to draw directly upon the environment it encounters. This sense of opportunity extends to the realm of science as well. Each new body represents a unique sample of the processes that shape the solar system. Some may carry volatile compounds preserved since the early days of planetary formation, while others may reveal the aftermath of impact-driven fragmentation. Together, they form a library of solar history, each orbiting fragment a book waiting to be read. The task ahead is to design missions capable of accessing this library, of reaching these objects and unlocking their contents. 3I Atlas, by multiplying the number of available targets, ensures that the potential for discovery will outstrip the capacity of any single mission, guaranteeing generations of work for scientists to come. The abundance of objects also shifts how we think about Mars as a place within the solar system. Rather than being defined solely by its geological features or its potential for life, Mars now takes on a new identity as the center of a dynamic orbital community. This identity makes it distinct from Earth, with its solitary moon, and from the giant planets with their vast swarms of satellites. Mars occupies a middle ground, its system not sparse but also not overwhelming, a balance that offers clarity without losing richness. This middle ground may prove to be more common than previously imagined, A reminder that the solar system is not built in absolutes, but in variations, each world carving out its own character. As 3i Atlas continues its work, the role of human interpretation grows. Each detection must be confirmed, analyzed, and understood, a process that requires not just technology, but judgment. Scientists must decide whether a faint trace represents a real body or a passing anomaly, whether an orbital calculation reflects permanence or transience. These judgments accumulate, shaping the way the multiplying objects are understood and presented to the world. The act of discovery is thus not passive but active, a collaboration between the spacecraft's sensors and the human minds tasked with making sense of the flood of data. The psychological effect of this multiplication should not be underestimated. The idea of abundance, of the cosmos teeming with overlooked presences, resonates deeply. It challenges assumptions of emptiness, replacing them with images of fullness and complexity. For those following the mission, the knowledge that Mars is surrounded by a hidden population of companions adds wonder to a world already rich with fascination. It suggests that the universe, even in familiar places, always holds more than is seen at first glance. This sense of inexhaustible discovery fuels imagination and sustains the drive to explore further. The expanding catalog also raises questions about the ultimate fates of these objects. Some will eventually fall inward, crashing into Mars in a spray of debris. Others will be flung outward, released back into solar orbits, their brief residence around Mars ended. A few may remain stable for immense spans of time, becoming enduring companions whose existence will outlast civilizations on Earth. To study them now is to catch them in a moment of their journey, to witness a snapshot of orbits that are always in motion, always shifting toward future outcomes. The multiplying objects thus remind us that celestial systems are not static, but alive with change, their apparent stillness hiding ceaseless transformation. The open question remains how much more is yet to be found. With every hour, 3i Atlas continues its silent approach, its sensors probing deeper into the Martian sky. The multiplication shows no sign of slowing, suggesting that the environment may hold still more surprises, objects too small, too dim, or too elusive to have been glimpsed until now. The sense of anticipation builds with every transmission, as though Mars is slowly revealing layers of itself, each layer more intricate than the last. What lies beyond the current horizon of detection remains unknown, but the promise of discovery lingers, pulling attention forward into what is yet to come. And so the spacecraft continues onward, its journey far from complete, its revelations far from exhausted. The multiplication of objects is not the end of a story, but the beginning of one, a prelude to a deeper understanding of Mars and its surroundings. The sky grows richer with every passing day, and the possibilities expand with it. The approach has not yet concluded, the detections have not yet ceased, and the narrative remains open, waiting for the next detail, the next object, the next insight to carry it further into the unknown. The quiet advance of 3i Atlas through the deep reaches of interplanetary space has now become a drama of increasing density, a journey where every kilometer traveled yields fresh revelations. The multiplying objects discovered around Mars are not static features, but an ever-deepening expression of complexity. What began as isolated detections has grown into a cascade, each new object adding its own dimension, each orbit weaving itself into a web that grows more intricate by the day. The approach has turned the Martian environment into a stage where abundance replaces emptiness, and where the story of a planet once thought to be simple is revealed as layered beyond expectation. The growing sense of complexity lies not just in the number of objects, but in their variety of behaviors. Some are steady in their orbits, holding predictable paths as though anchored in invisible tracks. Others wander restlessly, pulled by conflicting forces, their motions erratic and difficult to forecast. Still others seem to occupy liminal states, neither stable nor fleeting, their future balanced on a knife edge of gravitational tug. This spectrum of behaviors transforms the orbital space around Mars into a living laboratory where chaos and order intertwine. It is not a static snapshot, but a moving symphony, every body shifting slightly with time, every motion influenced by the unseen pull of others. Among the most fascinating aspects of this symphony is the way it reflects Mars's particular place in the solar system. Unlike Earth, which commands a large, stable moon, or the gas giants with their sprawling families of satellites, Mars is positioned at a crossroads. It is close enough to the asteroid belt to intercept wanderers, but not massive enough to hold them indefinitely. It sits within reach of solar tides strong enough to tug at its companions. Yet its own irregular gravity, shaped by massive volcanoes and impact scars, adds unique perturbations. The result is an orbital environment unlike any other, one where bodies come and go with greater frequency, where capture and release are constant themes, and where every new object is part of an ongoing process rather than a settled arrangement. The discoveries also underscore how fragile permanence can be. Many of the objects identified will not remain around Mars forever. Their orbits are tenuous, temporary accommodations in a system that is always in motion. Some will eventually spiral inward, colliding with the planet's surface and adding their mass to its crust. Others will be nudged outward, escaping back into heliocentric paths. A few may disintegrate entirely, broken apart by collisions or by the stress of tidal forces. Yet the fleeting nature of these presences makes their discovery all the more precious. To observe them now is to capture a moment that may not exist tomorrow or in 1,000 years. The multiplication of objects is not simply about abundance, but about impermanence, about the chance to witness phenomena that are passing through Mars's story only briefly. At the same time, the more enduring companions speak to Mars's hidden history. Bodies that have remained in orbit for millions of years are silent witnesses to events that shaped the planet long before humanity existed. They have circled as volcanoes rose, as rivers carved valleys, as atmospheres thickened and thinned. Their very endurance makes them invaluable archives, carrying records of material, chemistry, and structure that may no longer be visible on Mars itself. These objects are not just companions, but time capsules, orbiting museums of a history that stretches back into the early solar system. Their multiplication enriches the potential to piece together that history, providing multiple lines of evidence from different angles of Mars's past. The sense of abundance also changes the way the red planet is imagined in practical terms. Future exploration will take place in a more crowded neighborhood than anyone previously assumed. Engineers planning trajectories for orbiters will have to account for this density, plotting paths that avoid not only Mars's surface, but its population of companions. Landers descending through the sky must be aware of debris streams that could complicate entry. Even communications networks may one day rely on small relay stations positioned among these bodies, taking advantage of their natural positions as platforms for human-made instruments. The multiplying objects are no longer mere curiosities. They are features of a landscape that future missions must inhabit, navigate, and perhaps even utilize. Their potential use as resources is especially compelling. Many of these bodies likely contain ice, minerals, or metals that could be invaluable to explorers. A fragment rich in water could be mined to provide drinking supplies or processed into hydrogen and oxygen for fuel. Metallic fragments could support construction or repairs. Instead of seeing Mars as isolated, requiring every ounce of material to be transported from Earth, the multiplication of objects suggests a world surrounded by potential partners in survival. Each newly discovered body becomes not just a point of study, but a potential tool, a piece of infrastructure waiting to be integrated into the unfolding endeavor of interplanetary living. This shift from hazard to opportunity is emblematic of exploration itself. In the early stages, the multiplying objects seem like complications, challenges that make Mars more difficult to approach. But with imagination, those same complications become openings, paths to sustainability and expansion. The abundance that first appeared overwhelming can instead be harnessed, turned into a foundation for new ways of living and exploring. Mars's crowded skies are not a barrier, but an invitation, asking humanity to adapt its approach and to find opportunity in the unexpected. The resonance of these discoveries extends into culture and imagination. For centuries, Mars was portrayed as lonely, its surface barren, its moons small and meager. The revelation of a crowded sky transforms that image entirely. Mars becomes a host, a planet not alone but encircled, its presence amplified by companions that were always there but unseen. This new image carries emotional weight, reshaping the stories that will be told about the red planet. It will inspire new visions of arrival, not as a landing on a solitary globe, but as an entry into a community of bodies, each orbiting in its own rhythm. Such transformations of perception matter because they shape the way exploration is pursued, supported, and remembered. The accelerating pace of discoveries gives the impression of inevitability, as though the closer 3I Atlas comes, the more inexhaustible the sky becomes. The multiplication is not a plateau, but a curve rising steeply upward, hinting that what has been revealed so far is only the beginning. This sense of acceleration heightens anticipation, making each transmission a potential revelation, each new data set a step into uncharted territory. The narrative is not static but dynamic, unfolding in real time as humanity watches. The spacecraft is not just delivering data, but composing a story, one where every object adds a sentence, every orbit adds a paragraph, and the conclusion remains unwritten. The open-endedness of this story is perhaps its most profound aspect. Unlike a single discovery that can be neatly defined, the multiplication of objects is inherently unbounded. There may always be more to find, smaller, fainter, subtler bodies waiting just beyond the threshold of detection. This unboundedness ensures that the narrative cannot be closed, that the approach of 3I Atlas will always be a prelude rather than an ending. The revelations keep the horizon moving forward, promising that Mars will continue to surprise, continue to complicate, and continue to inspire. And still, the spacecraft moves closer, its instruments alive with the signals of a sky far richer than expected. The multiplying objects continue to emerge, shaping not only the understanding of Mars, but the possibilities of exploration itself. Each orbiting companion is another voice in a chorus that has only just begun to be heard. The song is not finished, the discovery is not complete, the story not closed. The approach is ongoing, the multiplication still unfolding, and the horizon ahead remains open, waiting for the next revelation, the next detection, the next unexpected presence to carry the narrative further into the unknown. The steady momentum of 3I Atlas, still advancing with absolute precision through the black gulf of space, has given rise to a continuous unfolding of discovery that seems to grow richer with every new transmission. The multiplying objects appearing around Mars are not simply catalog entries on a screen, they represent an expanding awareness of how intricate and unpredictable the Martian environment has always been. What seemed empty is revealed as full. What was thought simple is shown to be profoundly layered. With every orbit mapped and every faint glimmer resolved, Mars becomes less of a solitary world and more of a system, alive with motion and complexity that had long remained hidden from human eyes. The sensation produced by this multiplication is one of cascading revelation. Each object identified is not an isolated event but part of a growing pattern, as though the act of approaching Mars is itself causing veils to lift. Where once 2 moons defined the entire imagination of Martian companionship, now there are dozens, hundreds, perhaps more, each with its own trajectory, history, and destiny. The expansion is not linear but exponential, and this geometric growth of awareness suggests that the richness of Mars's orbital domain may have only just begun to be uncovered. The spacecraft, pressing closer with each passing day, is less a passive observer than a catalyst, its instruments transforming faint traces into solid presences and thereby expanding the very boundary of the known. One of the most striking dimensions of this new picture is the sense of variety in orbital architecture. Some of the newly revealed bodies orbit nearly equatorially, tracing steady paths aligned with the spin of Mars. Others tilt dramatically, their inclined orbits hinting at violent origins, perhaps the result of impacts or captures from wandering asteroids. Still others pursue retrograde motions, circling in defiance of the planet's rotation, a sign that they were not born of Mars, but pulled into its service from elsewhere. This spectrum of orbital geometries speaks to a history of constant change, a narrative where Mars has been both donor and recipient, shaping its environment while being shaped by forces beyond itself. What makes this multiplication of objects uniquely powerful is not only their presence, but their capacity to serve as archives of cosmic history. A fragment caught in Mars's orbit is not simply a rock in motion. It is a vessel carrying within it clues about where it came from and what forces acted upon it. Some may retain volatile ices from deep space, preserved in the cold of interplanetary shadows before being drawn toward the red planet. Others may bear the mineral fingerprint of Mars itself, launched into orbit by ancient collisions so violent that they altered the planet's surface forever. In either case, each new detection is a potential witness to epochs humanity has never seen, epics that remain written only in the material record of these small companions. The multiplication also compels a re-evaluation of Mars's gravitational identity. Unlike the giants of the outer system, Mars does not dominate with sheer bulk, and yet its orbital environment is proving unexpectedly fertile. The irregularities in its mass distribution, its history of impacts, and its proximity to the asteroid belt combine to create a gravitational field that is less uniform, more lopsided, more capable of producing pockets of stability where small bodies can linger. This patchwork gravity, though weaker than Earth's, becomes a trap for fragments drifting by, holding them long enough to reveal themselves. The more 3I Atlas uncovers, the clearer it becomes that Mars's gravity is not simple but nuanced, capable of weaving an environment rich with temporary and permanent companions alike. For explorers, these discoveries are more than scientific curiosities. They are realities that will shape every future journey into Martian space. A spacecraft entering orbit must now contend with a far more complex environment than anticipated, one where previously invisible hazards may lurk in the shadows. Precision navigation becomes paramount, with every new detection requiring careful mapping and avoidance. Yet paradoxically, the very hazards also represent potential allies. A fragment orbiting high above Mars could one day serve as a staging point for refueling, a platform for communications, or a natural outpost for human settlement. What today is perceived as a complication may tomorrow be transformed into a cornerstone of sustainability. The narrative of Mars itself changes with each new object revealed. For centuries, Mars was envisioned in isolation, its skies populated only by Phobos and Deimos. That vision is being replaced by one of abundance, where Mars is surrounded by a halo of companions of every size and composition. This new image is not only more accurate but also more resonant, reshaping cultural imagination. No longer has a lonely desert planet Mars become a node in a bustling orbital community, a world whose skies are alive with countless presences. This transformation will ripple outward, influencing the way people think about Mars not only in scientific terms but in artistic, philosophical, and even spiritual ones. The process of multiplication also highlights the remarkable capabilities of 3I Atlas itself. The spacecraft was built with the precision to detect the faintest signals, the agility to adjust its gaze, and the resilience to transmit torrents of data back across the solar system. Every new object is as much a testament to its instruments as to the abundance of Mars. Without such technology, the companions now being catalogued would have remained ghosts, invisible against the glare of the planet or the wash of starlight. The spacecraft has become, in effect, an extension of human senses, enabling the species to perceive richness where previously only emptiness seemed to exist. The multiplying objects also suggest a deeper principle, that emptiness in space is often an illusion created by the limits of perception. What was thought barren turns out, under closer scrutiny, to be teeming. This principle, demonstrated now around Mars, may apply across the cosmos, hinting that every planetary system holds layers of unseen abundance waiting for discovery. The lesson is both humbling and inspiring, a reminder that human knowledge, however vast it may seem, is always partial, always subject to expansion when new instruments probe with finer precision. The implications for the study of time are equally profound. Each object follows an orbit that has evolved across centuries or millennia, and in tracing these motions, scientists can reconstruct a history of gravitational interactions. Some orbits may point to past encounters with comets or asteroids, others to ancient collisions that reshape the Martian surface. By studying their motions, researchers can rewind the celestial clock, glimpsing the processes that have sculpted the Martian system over unimaginable spans of time. The multiplying objects are therefore not only companions of the present, but guides to the past, their paths charting stories that reach back into the earliest days of the solar system. Their futures, too, carry significance. Some will endure for millions of years, becoming stable companions of Mars. Others will be fleeting, pulled away by solar tides or nudged into collision. A few may become meteors streaking across the Martian sky, natural fireworks that remind any future observers of the ceaseless dance overhead. The diversity of fates makes the population dynamic rather than static, ensuring that the multiplication of objects is never complete, that new arrivals and departures will continue indefinitely. This dynamism turns Mars into a stage of perpetual change where abundance is not a single discovery but an ongoing process. The cultural power of this revelation cannot be overstated. Humanity thrives on stories of discovery, and the idea that Mars is surrounded by a hidden multitude is a story of endless intrigue. It expands the way people imagine the red planet, transforming it from a place of stark simplicity into one of complexity and richness. It invites speculation about what else remains unseen, what other surprises wait to be revealed, not just around Mars but across the universe. The multiplication of objects is thus not only a scientific event but an imaginative one, opening new pathways of thought and inspiring fresh visions of what exploration means. Even now, as 3I Atlas presses closer, the multiplication continues, and the sense grows that what has been discovered so far is only the first layer. The spacecraft is not yet in orbit, its instruments not yet at their maximum resolution. The closer it comes, the more finely it will be able to distinguish faint traces from background noise, and the more certain it will become in confirming detections. Each step nearer promises more abundance, more richness, more complexity, until the skies around Mars are mapped in detail that today can only be guessed at. As the spacecraft 3I Atlas advances through the thinning gulf that separates Mars from interplanetary space, the expanding tally of objects within the Martian system grows with a relentlessness that feels almost organic, as if the act of approach itself is coaxing reality into disclosure. Each new transmission carries signals of additional companions, faint streaks of light, minute gravitational tugs, subtle patterns of reflected sunlight. The multiplication of these objects has shifted from being a mere phenomenon of detection into something resembling a revelation of identity. Mars is no longer just a planet with a thin atmosphere and a ruddy desert surface. It has become a central figure in a gathering, a gravitational host presiding over a crowded orbital domain. The changing character of perception is central to what makes this moment extraordinary. From Earth, the Martian system was imagined as straightforward. Two irregular moons, little else. With each day of 3I, Atlas's approach, that picture disintegrates. The closer the spacecraft comes, the more Mars's environment reveals itself as textured and populous, filled with presences that once escaped all detection. The simple becomes complex, the isolated becomes social. The planet once seen as a lonely sphere is now part of an orbital community. Such transformations remind us that distance is not only a measure of kilometers but also of knowledge, and that to draw closer is not merely to travel but to deepen awareness. The multiplying objects come in an astonishing range of forms. Some are fragments so small they dance on the edge of invisibility, moving like dust motes in the glare of sunlight. Others are sizable enough to cast clear silhouettes, suggesting densities and compositions that set them apart from their neighbors. There are clusters where material seems loosely bound, behaving almost like clouds of rubble. There are solitary fragments locked into steady revolutions. Each of these categories hints at different origins, different pathways by which matter has been introduced into Mars's sphere of influence. This diversity ensures that the population is not homogeneous but cosmopolitan, assembled from multiple sources across both Martian and solar system history. The orbits themselves are maps of that history. Stable loops suggest companions that may have been circling Mars for eons, survivors of long ages of solar perturbation and planetary influence. More elongated orbits imply recent captures, objects drawn in temporarily and destined eventually to slip away. Inclined paths point to violent interactions, collisions, or near misses that have thrown fragments askew. Retrograde trajectories speak unmistakably of bodies that did not originate here, travelers arrested from other domains and forced into the service of Mars's gravity. This mixture creates an orbital society whose members differ not only in size and composition, but in age, origin, and character. The system becomes a mosaic, and each piece of that mosaic enriches the picture of Mars as a crossroads of cosmic dynamics. The abundance has implications that stretch far beyond astronomy. For future missions, the complexity of Mars's orbital environment introduces challenges that will demand entirely new strategies. Trajectories for orbiters must be refined with unprecedented care. Plans for human landings will need to factor in a sky that is less empty than once believed. Even communications arrays may have to consider interference or opportunities created by these newfound companions. What once seemed a relatively straightforward orbital insertion is now complicated by the need to navigate a system that is alive with motion. But complexity is not only difficulty, it is also opportunity. The very objects that pose hazards may also offer platforms, resources, and stepping stones for exploration, transforming Mars's environment into an active participant in humanity's future beyond Earth. The multiplication also broadens the scope of scientific inquiry. Each object provides a potential archive of information inaccessible from the Martian surface alone. Some may preserve the record of ancient impacts, carrying within their mineral structures traces of what Mars was like billions of years ago. Others may be remnants of bodies from the asteroid belt, bringing with them chemical clues about regions of the solar system that have never been visited directly. Still others might bear surface coatings altered by solar radiation over millions of years, offering laboratories for studying how matter evolves in space. The sheer number of companions ensures that no single narrative will suffice. The story of Mars's orbital environment will be multifaceted, composed of overlapping histories converging in a single place. These discoveries also redefine what it means to imagine Mars culturally. For centuries, Mars has been depicted in poetry, art, and science fiction as barren and solitary, a desert world circled by two lonely moons. That image is no longer tenable. Instead, Mars must now be pictured as surrounded, as encircled by a retinue that is small but numerous, fragile yet abundant. This new vision has the power to ripple outward into literature, film, and collective imagination. Children who once drew Mars as a simple red ball with two dots beside it will now depict a planet orbited by a halo of complexity. The cultural symbolism of Mars shifts with these discoveries, moving from austerity to richness, from isolation to community. At the same time, the very act of multiplication demonstrates something fundamental about exploration, that the universe rarely conforms to human expectations. The history of science is filled with moments where apparent simplicity gave way to unsuspected richness, where initial assumptions were overturned by evidence. The multiplying objects around Mars are the latest in this tradition. They remind us that discovery is not about confirming what we already think, but about confronting the unexpected, about allowing reality to surprise us. In this way, the mission of 3I Atlas becomes more than a technical endeavor. It becomes a philosophical one, a reaffirmation of humanity's willingness to be humbled by the cosmos. The variety of compositions among these objects also stirs questions about habitability and chemistry. Some may contain frozen volatiles, pockets of water, or carbon dioxide preserved from earlier eras. Others may be rich in carbon compounds, materials that carry potential significance for understanding how organic chemistry spreads across planetary systems. While none of these companions are likely to harbor life themselves, they may still carry within them the seeds of processes that make life possible, evidence of the pathways by which complex molecules travel and interact. The multiplication of objects, therefore, intersects with the study of life, not directly but indirectly by providing new laboratories for investigating the preconditions of biology. The sense of impermanence that pervades many of these orbits deepens the poignancy of their discovery. Some of the bodies 3I Atlas has detected may not survive for more than a few centuries, or even decades. They are fleeting companions, destined either to crash into Mars, to fragment further, or to drift back into the wider solar system. To observe them now is to witness a moment in a cosmic story that is always changing. These detections are not merely records of objects, but of times, snapshots of arrangements that will not last forever. The multiplication of objects becomes, in this sense, a meditation on time itself, on the ephemeral character of even celestial bodies that seem eternal when viewed from Earth. The practical lessons from this multiplication are equally significant. Engineers and scientists must reimagine how missions are conceived. Navigation software must be adapted to track a far greater number of potential hazards. Resource planners must consider whether some of these objects can be harnessed for support. Long-term mission architectures must account for a Martian environment that is not static but dynamic, where new companions may appear and old ones may vanish over the course of decades. Exploration thus becomes a process not only of discovery, but of adaptation, a continual negotiation with a reality that refuses to stay still. The multiplying companions also highlight the interconnectedness of Mars with the wider solar system. These are not isolated phenomena, but part of the grand circulation of matter that defines planetary dynamics. Some of the bodies may have originated in the asteroid belt, others from comets, still others from Mars itself. Together, they illustrate the flow of material across boundaries, the way gravity and momentum distribute fragments from one region to another. Mars is not a closed system, but an open one, continually exchanging matter with its neighbors. This openness reinforces the sense that the solar system is not a collection of separate worlds, but a single, interconnected whole. The symbolic resonance of these discoveries is profound. Multiplication implies growth, and growth implies vitality. To see Mars surrounded by multiplying companions is to imagine it not as barren, but as alive in its own way. Alive with motion, interaction, and complexity. This vitality resonates with the human spirit, which seeks in exploration not only knowledge but inspiration. The multiplying objects inspire precisely because they suggest that there is always more to see, more to know, more to imagine. They offer proof that discovery is inexhaustible, that the universe will never run out of surprises. And still, as 3I Atlas draws nearer, the multiplication continues. Each hour brings new detections. Each detection adds to the chorus, and the chorus itself grows louder and richer. The narrative is not complete, the sky not yet fully mapped. What has been revealed so far is only the first act of a story whose later chapters remain unwritten. The spacecraft has not yet reached its closest point. Its instruments have not yet achieved their sharpest view. The promise of further revelation remains. The sense of expectation grows, and the horizon of discovery lies open, inviting continuation. The advance of 3I Atlas through the thinning gulf between interplanetary space and the Martian system has now become something beyond a mission profile. It has become a theater of unfolding presence, where every new detection transforms the silence around Mars into a polyphony of motion and complexity. The multiplication of objects detected around the planet no longer feels like a set of incidental discoveries. It is the revelation of a system that was always there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for human technology to become sharp enough, steady enough, and relentless enough to notice. Each orbit charted, each flicker of reflection distinguished from background noise becomes part of an expanding portrait that defies the notion of Mars as a solitary barren world. What is most striking about this moment is how effortlessly abundance supplants scarcity. For centuries, Mars was described in terms of limitation. A small planet with only 2 moons, a place where atmosphere is scarce, where water is sparse, where habitability is tenuous. But now, 3I Atlas brings into focus a new layer of richness. The skies are filled with companions. Small, yes, fragile, certainly, but numerous beyond expectation. The multiplication of these objects reframes Mars from a world defined by scarcity to one surrounded by abundance. The narrative of isolation has given way to one of participation in a cosmic dance, and with each passing hour the choreography grows more elaborate. The diversity of the newfound bodies is a revelation in itself. Some of them shimmer faintly as if cloaked in dust, aggregates of loosely bound material that threaten to disperse at any moment. Others shine with the steadiness of denser rock, their surfaces reflecting sunlight in consistent rhythms that hint at composition and shape. There are companions whose orbits stretch long and thin, grazing Mars before swinging outward again, and others that hug the planet closely, moving in rapid revolutions that suggest tenuous stability. The picture emerging is not of uniformity but of variety, and it is precisely this variety that makes the discoveries so powerful. Mars is revealed as a host not of one kind of object but of many, each a representative of different histories and forces. Some of these objects, judging from the spectral data gathered, may contain metallic signatures suggestive of iron and nickel, remnants of ancient collisions involving differentiated bodies. Others may carry darker coatings rich in carbonaceous compounds resembling primitive asteroids that have preserved the chemical fingerprints of the early solar system. Still others may be icy at their cores, fragile repositories of volatiles that once moved through colder regions before wandering into Mars's orbit. This compositional spectrum expands the scientific promise of the discoveries. It means that the Martian system has not drawn companions from a single source, but from multiple reservoirs, acting as a kind of gravitational marketplace where material from across the solar system gathers and mingles. The orbits tell stories as intricate as the compositions. Objects that orbit equatorially, aligned with the spin of Mars, suggest a long-term relationship, perhaps fragments born of Martian impacts. Inclined orbits, however, indicate more turbulent pasts, bodies captured suddenly, perturbed violently, or thrown into motion by interactions with Phobos and Deimos. Retrograde orbits speak most clearly of foreign origin, companions that came not from Mars but from elsewhere, pulled in by accident and now circling in defiance of the planet's rotation. This orbital variety reinforces the sense of Mars as a crossroads, a place where histories converge, overlap, and evolve. The multiplication of objects thus becomes a multiplication of stories. Each orbit a chapter, each trajectory a record of origins and encounters. The implications for exploration are both daunting and inspiring. A spacecraft arriving at Mars now faces a more complex neighborhood than expected. Hazards are real. Even a fragment only a few meters across could pose catastrophic danger at orbital velocities. Navigators must map trajectories with exquisite care, ensuring safety in an environment alive with motion. Yet these same companions also offer opportunities. They can be studied as natural laboratories, mined for resources, or even transformed into platforms for instruments and outposts. Where once Mars seemed to offer little more than surface exploration, it now presents a three-dimensional environment filled with stepping stones for sustained presence. The richness of this orbital community also expands what Mars means symbolically. No longer the image of desolation, no longer a planet alone with its two tiny moons, it now emerges as a hub in its own right, a gravitational host presiding over an entourage of companions. This reframing matters deeply. It shapes not only scientific plans but cultural imagination. The Mars of the future will be pictured with crowded skies, a world alive with nearby motion. The stories humanity tells about this planet will evolve accordingly, moving from the loneliness of a desert to the complexity of a system. The multiplication of objects ensures that Mars will be remembered not only as a place to land, but as a place to navigate, inhabit, and interpret anew. The technological triumph of 3I Atlas lies at the center of this unfolding richness. Its sensors have proven capable of isolating the faintest signals from the noise of space, distinguishing fragile companions that even the best telescopes on Earth could not confirm. Each detection is a confirmation of the precision of human engineering, of the ability to create machines that extend human senses beyond their natural range. The spacecraft is not merely reporting, it is transforming what is possible to know. The multiplication of objects is therefore not only a property of Mars, but also a measure of how far human technology has come in revealing what was always there, invisible until now. The multiplying companions also compel a reconsideration of permanence. Some of the bodies identified may remain in orbit for millions of years, enduring companions of Mars that will circle long after today's civilizations have faded. Others may be transient, destined to spiral inward or to escape outward after only brief residencies measured in centuries. To observe them now is to capture a moment in flux, a snapshot of a system that is forever changing. This mixture of permanence and impermanence makes the discoveries poignant. They are not only about what Mars is, but about what Mars is becoming and what it has already been. The multiplication is thus not only spatial but temporal, multiplying perspectives on time as much as on place. The sheer number of objects being uncovered also pushes the boundaries of scientific methodology. Classifying them requires new frameworks, dividing them into categories of stability, origin, and composition. Some are likely fragments of Mars itself, others captured asteroids, still others debris from ancient collisions involving Phobos and Deimos. Creating order out of this abundance is a challenge that will occupy researchers for years to come. The multiplication of objects is not only a gift of data, but also a demand for interpretation, forcing new models, new theories, and new languages of description. This abundance carries implications for planetary defense as well. The same gravitational processes that allow Mars to capture and hold these objects also mean that some of them may eventually be nudged onto collision courses. While such impacts would not threaten Earth, they could alter the Martian environment, raising clouds of dust or creating new craters that future explorers must account for. Monitoring these bodies becomes not just a scientific curiosity, but a practical necessity, ensuring that missions to Mars are aware of the shifting hazards in its skies. The multiplication of objects is therefore a matter of both wonder and vigilance, expanding imagination while sharpening caution. The discoveries also invite reflection on the wider principle that what appears empty rarely is. Space, long thought of as void, repeatedly reveals itself to be full when observed with sufficient care. Around Mars, this principle is now demonstrated dramatically. Where once only 2 moons were thought to exist, there is now a multitude. The lesson is clear. The universe hides richness in plain sight, and discovery is a matter of approaching closely enough, looking carefully enough, and refusing to assume emptiness where complexity waits to be revealed. This principle, though demonstrated at Mars, surely applies everywhere, from the smallest asteroids to the largest galaxies. And yet, for all the discoveries already made, the sense remains that the story is not finished. 3. I-Atlas has not yet reached its closest point. Its instruments have not yet achieved their finest resolution. The multiplication of objects, impressive as it already is, may only be the beginning. There may be smaller bodies yet unseen, fainter clusters awaiting just the right angle of light, subtler orbits hidden in the background of data. Each day closer to Mars sharpens the picture. Each moment of approach holds the promise of more. The abundance already revealed may pale compared to what remains. The narrative of Mars has thus been transformed, and the transformation is ongoing. What began as a world imagined in isolation is now revealed as a community of orbits, each companion a voice in a chorus still swelling. The multiplication of objects is not a completed event, but a process, an unfolding that continues as 3 I-Atlas advances. The story remains open, the discoveries unfinished, the horizon of revelation stretching ahead. Mars is no longer only a planet, it is a system, and that system is still revealing itself. The spacecraft's journey is not yet complete. The instruments are still recording and the multiplication is still underway, promising that the next transmission may carry still more presences, still more voices, still more complexity to weave into the growing tapestry of understanding. The voyage of 3 I-Atlas continues with an unbroken precision, its trajectory narrowing the distance to Mars, as though the spacecraft were following a line of inevitability across the dark expanse. With each hour, the transmissions cascading back toward Earth add to the ever-growing tapestry of discovery. The multiplying objects around the red planet are no longer statistical curiosities. They have become a defining characteristic of the system itself. Mars, once depicted as a desert sphere with 2 small moons, is now revealed as surrounded by a retinue that stretches in scale from faint motes of debris to substantial companions locked in looping orbits. The universe is proving once again to be more crowded, more layered, and more vibrant than assumptions had allowed. What astonishes most is the unrelenting pace of revelation. Multiplication implies growth, and growth here is not modest but exponential. At first, only a handful of faint bodies flickered into the field of observation. Then dozens, then scores, then more, until the idea of a limited population no longer makes sense. The closer 3 I-Atlas draws, the more sensitive its instruments become, the more refined its algorithms grow, and the richer the skies appear. The sense is that this multiplication may have no sharp boundary, that the smaller and subtler the detection threshold becomes, the more objects will emerge from the shadows. What is being revealed is not a finite set, but a continuum of presences, each occupying its own place in the gravity of Mars. The diversity of forms makes the multiplication even more compelling. Some companions are little more than rubble clusters, fragile gatherings of rock and dust that hold together only loosely, their cohesion constantly threatened by the subtle pull of competing forces. Others are compact fragments, spinning steadily as they trace their orbits, their very solidity speaking to ancient origins. A few appear to shimmer with faint halos, perhaps shedding particles into tenuous trails that follow them like ephemeral signatures. Every new detection expands the vocabulary of what an orbital companion can be, moving beyond the simple binary of moon and not moon. Mars is revealed as encircled by a spectrum, a gradation of bodies that blur categories and demand new ways of thinking. This spectrum forces a reconsideration of how systems are defined. The giant planets with their dozens of moons seem to embody abundance, while Mars with its 2 small satellites seems sparse. But the multiplying objects collapse that distinction. Mars has abundance, not in the form of a few massive satellites, but in the form of many smaller ones, a different kind of richness. This suggests that planetary systems cannot be ranked simply by the size of their companions, but must be appreciated for the full variety of their populations. Mars, modest in size, has become a demonstration that even small planets can sustain complex orbital environments. The implications ripple outward to exoplanetary science, where distant worlds may harbor similarly overlooked retinues invisible to our current instruments, but no less real. The orbits themselves create a narrative of motion that feels almost alive. Some companions circle close, their revolutions rapid, their lifespans precarious as atmospheric drag slowly nudges them downward. Others sweep far out, tracing elongated paths that carry them into the liminal zone where the sun's gravity threatens to pull them away. Between these extremes lie countless variations: inclined loops, chaotic wobbles, orbits twisted by resonances with Phobos or Deimos. Each motion is a story of negotiation with Mars's gravity, with the pull of the sun, with the tug of neighboring bodies. To track these orbits is to watch a ceaseless conversation of forces, one that has been ongoing for billions of years but is only now being overheard with clarity. The multiplication also raises questions about origin with sharper urgency. Which of these companions were born from Mars itself, hurled outward by colossal impacts that scarred its crust? Which drifted in from the asteroid belt, caught for a while in Mars's gravity before they eventually slipped free? Which may have once been part of Phobos or Deimos, broken away by ancient collisions or tidal stresses? Every orbiting body is a clue, and every clue must be pieced together into a broader mosaic of planetary history. Mars's past, already complex with volcanism, tectonics, and atmosphere loss, now becomes even richer, because its skies preserve fragments of that past in the form of orbiting relics. The abundance transforms the practical realities of exploration. Missions cannot treat Martian space as empty corridors to be navigated with only planetary mass in mind. Instead, they must reckon with a sky that is populated, dynamic, and evolving. Flight paths must thread carefully between potential hazards. Satellites must account for nearby companions whose gravitational influences, while small, could build into significant perturbations over time. Landers descending through the atmosphere must be aware of debris streams that might intersect their paths. Mars is no longer a passive backdrop, but an active environment, one that demands respect and adaptation from any who would approach it. Yet the very challenges also bring opportunities. Small orbiting companions could be used as natural stations, providing vantage points for instruments, waypoints for travel, or sources of raw material. Ice-bearing fragments might one day be tapped to provide water for human explorers. Metal-rich bodies could supply construction material, reducing the need to haul everything from Earth. Even rubble clusters might serve as shields, dispersing harmful particles or acting as anchors for artificial structures. The multiplication of objects turns Mars into more than a destination. It becomes a resource field, a place where abundance can be turned to advantage. The symbolic impact is equally profound. Humanity has long pictured Mars as stark and lonely, a red desert world circled by two small and irregular moons. The new reality is one of richness, of skies crowded with companions, of orbits filled with presences both fragile and enduring. This revised image carries enormous cultural resonance. Mars is no longer simply an emblem of desolation, it is a place of surprising vitality. The multiplying companions provide a new metaphor for exploration itself. What appears barren becomes full. What seems exhausted becomes abundant. What was thought known reveals hidden layers. The shift in image will filter through art, literature, and imagination, reshaping how generations conceive of the Red Planet. The triumph of 3I Atlas as a machine of perception cannot be overstated. It is not simply traveling toward Mars, it is peeling back layers of invisibility, revealing complexity where human eyes once saw emptiness. Each detection is a function of its instrument's exquisite sensitivity, of algorithms designed to parse the faintest signals, of systems robust enough to transmit torrents of data across millions of kilometers. The multiplying objects are therefore not only gifts of Mars, but also monuments to human ingenuity, proof that with sufficient persistence and creativity, even the most elusive truths can be brought into view. The impermanence of many of these companions makes the discoveries all the more poignant. Some of the bodies now being cataloged will not survive long in cosmic terms. They will spiral inward and crash against Mars, or drift outward into interplanetary space, or disintegrate under the stress of collisions. To observe them now is to witness a fleeting arrangement, a temporary constellation that will not exist in the same form in the future. Their multiplication is thus a reminder of the transience of celestial configurations, of the way even the heavens are not fixed, but in flux. The discoveries capture a moment in a long unfolding, a snapshot of motion in a system that is forever changing. This sense of transience adds urgency to the work of classification and study. Each object cataloged is not only a presence but a moment, an arrangement that may not persist. The task of researchers is to record, to interpret, to preserve knowledge of these companions before they vanish. The multiplication of objects is not just an expansion of the present, but an expansion of responsibility, a call to capture what can be known before it changes beyond recognition. In this way, exploration becomes not only about discovery but about memory, about holding on to fleeting truths in the face of cosmic impermanence. The broader lesson of this multiplication is that the universe is layered with hidden richness, awaiting the right combination of perspective and proximity to reveal itself. Mars is not unique in this. It is simply the place where humanity's instruments are now most focused. The principle applies everywhere, to asteroids that may have hidden companions of their own, to exoplanets whose skies may swarm with unnoticed satellites, to distant systems where abundance waits in the shadows. The multiplying objects around Mars are a local demonstration of a universal truth. That emptiness is often an illusion, and that reality is almost always more complex than it appears from afar. And still, the approach continues. 3i Atlas has not yet reached its closest point, has not yet deployed the full sharpness of its gaze. The multiplication of objects already defies imagination, yet there remains every reason to expect more. Smaller fragments, subtler orbits, dimmer reflections, each lies waiting in the data of the days to come. The abundance already revealed is itself a promise, a prelude to discoveries still ahead. The sky around Mars has not finished unveiling itself, and the spacecraft has not finished listening. The narrative, therefore, remains open. Mars is no longer just a destination, it is an unfolding system, alive with motion and filled with companions that are only beginning to be understood. The multiplication of objects is not a closed event, but an ongoing process, a story still being written. The spacecraft moves steadily forward, the instruments continue to search, and the chorus of companions grows louder with every transmission. The end has not yet been reached. The revelations have not yet ceased, and the horizon of discovery stretches forward, open, unfinished, and waiting for the next detail, the next presence, the next revelation to carry the story further into the unknown. The unbroken trajectory of 3i Atlas as it closes in on Mars has turned into more than a journey across space. It is becoming a process of revelation, a slow peeling away of layers that exposes complexity, where the imagination once assumed simplicity. Every new transmission adds to the swelling catalog of objects detected around the red planet. What started as scattered points of light now appears as an entire network of companions, small and large, stable and transient, fragile and enduring. The multiplication of these objects is not simply a matter of numbers, it is a transformation of understanding, a recasting of Mars from an isolated body into the nucleus of an unexpected orbital society. What makes this moment extraordinary is how the discoveries build on one another, creating a sense of momentum. The spacecraft does not uncover one companion, then another, then stop. Instead, the detections cascade, each leading to the next, each hinting at further abundance still waiting to be seen. The multiplication has the quality of inevitability, as though Mars has been carrying these companions in secret all along, waiting for human instruments sharp enough to notice. That inevitability brings with it a peculiar wonder. For centuries, Mars was a symbol of barrenness, of limitation, of dust and desert. Now in its skies, the opposite appears: proliferation, variety, richness. The transformation is startling and profound. The range of these companions is as fascinating as their sheer number. Some are tiny fragments, barely larger than boulders, tracing unstable arcs that may last only decades before atmospheric drag or solar tides remove them. Others are substantial kilometer-sized bodies with steady paths that suggest long-term residence. Between these extremes lies every possibility. Objects with erratic orbits that wobble in chaotic patterns, clusters of debris moving together like swarms, fragments tumbling so quickly that their brightness shifts from moment to moment. The multiplying population is not uniform but kaleidoscopic, a mix of forms and behaviors that resists easy classification. Each orbit speaks of origins. The tight, nearly circular paths close to Mars suggest fragments blasted from the surface in impacts so ancient they predate much of the planet's current geography. Inclined or eccentric orbits imply more recent arrivals, perhaps asteroids that wandered too close and were captured temporarily. Retrograde trajectories tell of companions not born of Mars at all but drawn in from beyond, their defiance of the planet's rotation marking them as unmistakable outsiders. The multiplication of companions is thus also a multiplication of stories, each orbit a clue to a different chapter in Mars's long and tumultuous history. That history, preserved in these orbits, stretches back into epochs when Mars was a very different world. The planet once had a thicker atmosphere, flowing rivers and perhaps lakes and seas. It endured titanic collisions that carved vast basins and raised mountains taller than any on Earth. Every one of those events had the potential to cast fragments into space, fragments that could remain in orbit for eons. Some of the companions now multiplying before 3i. Atlas's sensors may therefore be survivors of cataclysms billions of years old, silent witnesses circling ever since. Others may have joined only recently, evidence that the process of capture and loss continues even now. The Martian system emerges not as static but as a dynamic continuum, a place where past and present meet in a ceaseless negotiation of gravity and chance. The practical consequences for exploration grow more pressing as the catalog expands. Spacecraft that once could rely on simple models of Martian orbits must now contend with a crowded neighborhood. Every new companion adds another variable to navigation, another hazard to be avoided. Yet these complications are inseparable from opportunities. The same companions that pose risks can also be used as resources. A small icy body could one day provide water to explorers. A metal-rich fragment could supply raw materials for construction. Even fragile rubble clusters could serve as anchors for instruments or as shields against solar radiation. The multiplication of objects changes Mars from a destination into an environment, a place whose surroundings can be harnessed as much as traversed. The multiplication also shifts the cultural identity of Mars. For generations, depictions of the red planet emphasized its loneliness, its two meager moons set against an endless desert sky. Now that vision must be replaced. Mars is not alone but encircled, its skies filled with companions of every size and type. This new image resonates deeply, altering the way Mars will appear in art, in literature, in imagination. It will no longer be the silent desert with two dots overhead, but a planet alive with motion, a hub of complexity that mirrors the richness of exploration itself. Such changes in image matter profoundly, for they shape not only public perception, but also the momentum of discovery, fueling the drive to know more and to go further. What underlies all of this is the triumph of technology embodied in 3i Atlas. Its sensors, designed to pierce through the noise of distance and starlight, are performing with astonishing precision. Faint flickers that would have gone unnoticed are resolved into real companions. Tiny gravitational influences that would have been lost in background error are teased out into measurable signals. Each object identified is as much a testament to the spacecraft's design as to the richness of Mars's environment. The multiplication of companions is therefore not only a revelation of the cosmos, but also a celebration of human ingenuity, proof that persistence and creativity can expand the boundaries of perception. The fragility of many of these companions adds another layer of meaning. Some are unstable, bound to last only a short while before colliding, escaping, or disintegrating. Their discovery is thus fleeting, a glimpse of arrangements that will not persist. To see them now is to capture a moment that future explorers may not witness. Others are enduring, destined to circle Mars for millions of years. The juxtaposition of fragility and permanence gives the multiplication of objects a quality both poignant and inspiring, a reminder that the cosmos is always in flux, and that discovery is always a matter of timing as much as of distance. The sheer number of companions also forces new approaches to classification. No longer can Mars be described as a planet with two moons. It is instead a planet with a spectrum of companions, some moons in the traditional sense, others temporary satellites, still others debris clouds or rubble clusters. Each must be understood on its own terms, and new language will be required to capture the variety. This proliferation of categories reflects the broader truth that reality rarely fits into simple boxes, and that exploration requires not only sharper instruments but more flexible concepts. The implications ripple outward into planetary science. If Mars, once thought to have only two companions, actually sustains a bustling population of orbiting bodies, what of other planets? What of Mercury, so close to the Sun? What of Venus, shrouded in its thick atmosphere? What of the countless exoplanets circling other stars, many of which have already been detected but whose skies remain unseen? The multiplication of objects around Mars suggests that abundance may be the norm rather than the exception. That unseen richness surrounds many worlds waiting only for the right instruments to be revealed. And still, the story is not finished. 3. Atlas has not yet reached its closest approach. Its instruments have not yet been brought to their maximum resolution. The multiplying objects already defy expectation. But there is every reason to believe that more remain hidden. Smaller fragments, subtler orbits, dimmer reflections, all lie waiting in the data yet to be collected. The discoveries made so far are not the conclusion, but the prologue, the opening of a narrative whose full scope remains unknown. Mars is no longer only a planet of dust and rock. It is the center of a dynamic system, a host surrounded by companions that multiply with every closer glance. The spacecraft continues forward, the instruments continue to search, and the catalog continues to grow. The multiplication is ongoing, the story still unfolding, the horizon still open. The next transmission may bring more. The next orbit may reveal another presence. The next calculation may confirm yet another companion. The narrative has no end yet, only continuations, only expansion, only the steady revelation of abundance in a cosmos that refuses to be simple. The journey of 3I Atlas has now entered a phase where every incremental shift toward Mars feels like the drawing back of a curtain. The darkness of interplanetary space, once an expanse assumed to be relatively empty, is being revealed as full of activity, presence, and motion. The multiplying objects uncovered in orbit around the red planet are no longer a curiosity at the edges of discovery, but have become the central fact of this mission. With each packet of data transmitted across millions of kilometers, the picture of Mars grows denser, more textured, and more alive. It is no longer possible to think of Mars in isolation. Its identity is bound up with the swarm of companions that crowd its skies, a hidden community now made visible. The sheer abundance continues to expand in ways that defy earlier expectations. Where two small moons once defined the Martian system, there are now dozens upon dozens of companions mapped, and the tally continues to rise. This multiplication has the quality of an unfolding revelation, as though Mars itself is offering up layers that have been concealed until the right vantage and the right instruments came together. The spacecraft does not encounter limits. Instead, each discovery leads to another, smaller, dimmer, or subtler. The suggestion grows that there may be no clear endpoint, that the more closely one looks, the more objects will be found. What was assumed to be sparse turns out to be inexhaustible, and that inexhaustibility becomes the defining feature of the Martian environment. The diversity within this abundance is as significant as the quantity. Some of the companions move in steady, predictable loops that hint at long-term stability. Others tumble erratically, their orientations changing constantly, their orbits shifting under the influence of multiple competing forces. Still others exist at the edge of coherence, clusters of debris barely held together, fragile gatherings of fragments that may scatter into the void at the slightest perturbation. This mixture creates a layered complexity, a system where permanence and transience, solidity and fragility, stability and chaos all coexist. Mars is no longer simply a planet with satellites, it is a gravitational nexus, an environment where many different kinds of orbital lives are possible. The origins of these companions remain one of the most compelling mysteries. Some may be the remnants of catastrophic collisions that scarred the Martian surface in deep antiquity. The planet bears impact basins hundreds of kilometers across, and the force of such impacts could have launched vast amounts of debris into orbit. Other companions may be captured wanderers, small asteroids from the belt beyond that strayed too close to Mars and were caught, at least temporarily, in its gravitational embrace. Still others might represent material lost from Phobos or Deimos, fragments broken away during impacts or torn off by tidal forces. Each new orbit mapped is not just a trajectory, it is a clue, a line of evidence pointing toward one or another origin. Together, the multiplying objects form a record of the many processes that have shaped the Martian system across billions of years. The implications for exploration grow sharper with each new detection. Spacecraft entering orbit must now contend with a far more populated environment than was previously modeled. The simple geometry of Mars, once sufficient for navigational planning, has been replaced by a web of orbits that must be tracked with care. The risks are real. An object only a few meters across, invisible from Earth, could be devastating if encountered at orbital velocity. Yet risk is only half the story. These companions can also be assets. A small body rich in ice could serve as a source of water. A metallic fragment could provide building material. Even rubble clusters might be harnessed as radiation shields or anchoring points for instruments. The multiplication of objects does not merely complicate exploration, it expands its possibilities. The cultural meaning of Mars is also shifting under the weight of these discoveries. For centuries, Mars has been imagined as stark and lonely, its surface a desert beneath a thin sky, its companionship limited to 2 irregular moons. The multiplying objects overturn that image entirely. Mars is not isolated but surrounded, its skies alive with motion, its orbit crowded with a population of companions that span the spectrum from ephemeral dust to enduring satellites. This new vision transforms Mars in the imagination. It becomes not a barren world but a hub, a center of complexity. That transformation will ripple outward through literature, art, and thought, altering how Mars is conceived for generations to come. The triumph of 3I Atlas lies in its ability to make the invisible visible. Its instruments are sensitive enough to distinguish faint glimmers from background noise, to trace orbital arcs where before only emptiness seemed to exist. Each detection is a testament to the spacecraft's design and to the ingenuity of the humans who built it. The multiplying objects are not just features of Mars, they are also demonstrations of what becomes possible when technology extends human perception. Without the spacecraft, the companions would have remained unseen, their existence unsuspected. With it, the universe reveals itself as richer, fuller, and more complex than assumed. The fragility of many of these objects adds poignancy to their discovery. Some are so tenuously bound that their lifetimes as companions may be measured in decades or centuries, brief flashes compared to the scale of cosmic time. They will collide, escape, or disperse, and future explorers may never see them. Others are enduring, their orbits stable for millions of years, destined to circle Mars long after current civilizations are gone. This juxtaposition of the fleeting and the lasting is part of what makes the multiplication so profound. It is not just a matter of quantity but of time, of capturing a dynamic system in a moment of its evolution, knowing that the moment itself will pass. The need for classification grows urgent as the population expands. No longer can Mars be described as having simply 2 moons. It has moons, yes, but also temporary satellites, debris clusters, rubble swarms, and fragments of every scale and kind. New frameworks will be required to categorize them, new language to capture their variety. This is not merely an academic exercise, but a practical necessity for navigation, mission planning, and scientific study. The multiplication of objects forces an expansion not only of catalogs but of thought, demanding new ways to describe a system that defies old simplicity. The discoveries also highlight Mars's role as a participant in the wider dynamics of the solar system. The same gravitational processes that allow it to capture small bodies also connect it to the flow of material across interplanetary space. Some companions may arrive from the asteroid belt, others may be ejected toward Earth-crossing orbits, still others may slip away toward the outer system. Mars is not closed but open, part of the circulation of matter that defines the solar system as a whole. The multiplication of objects makes this circulation visible, turning Mars into a node in a vast network of exchange. For scientists, the companions offer a wealth of new laboratories. Some may preserve primitive material from the early solar system unaltered by the processes that shaped planets. Others may record the chemical fingerprint of Mars itself, fragments of crust or mantle that reveal details no rover could access. Still, others may carry evidence of how radiation and solar wind alter matter over long timescales. Each companion is a sample waiting to be studied, and the multiplication of objects ensures that the possibilities for study are as abundant as they are varied. The sense of wonder produced by these discoveries is difficult to overstate. To imagine Mars as it was once conceived, a lonely desert with 2 moons, is now to confront how limited human imagination can be in the face of reality. The multiplying objects prove that the universe is not only stranger than expected, but more abundant. They embody the principle that discovery is inexhaustible, that every time humanity assumes it has reached the limit of what can be found, the cosmos reveals more. This is not just a scientific truth, but an existential one, a reminder that the universe will always outpace the assumptions made about it. And yet the story is still unfinished. 3I Atlas has not yet achieved its closest pass. Its instruments have not yet revealed their full capability. The multiplying objects already overwhelm expectation, but they may only be the beginning. Smaller fragments, dimmer companions, subtler orbits, these may still be waiting to emerge from the data. Each transmission holds the promise of more, and the abundance already uncovered serves only as a prelude. Mars's skies have not finished revealing themselves, and the spacecraft has not finished its work. The narrative remains open. Mars is no longer simply a destination, but a system, no longer solitary but surrounded. The multiplication of objects continues, the catalog grows, and the sense of richness deepens with every moment of approach. The spacecraft moves steadily forward, the instruments continue to scan, and the companions continue to multiply. The revelations are ongoing, the story still unfolding, and the horizon of discovery stretches ahead, unending, unfinished, waiting for the next revelation, the next presence, the next multiplication to carry the story further into the unknown. The passage of 3I Atlas through the thinning veil of interplanetary space has become an unfolding revelation that grows more intricate with every kilometer traveled. Mars, once pictured as a relatively simple world, 2 small moons above a barren expanse, has transformed before human eyes into something entirely different. Around it, an ever-thickening retinue of companions is being charted, the multiplication of objects creating a portrait of abundance where once only scarcity was imagined. With each detection, the character of Mars shifts from solitude to community, from emptiness to fullness, from static isolation to dynamic motion. The phenomenon of multiplication is not just numerical but qualitative. The discoveries are not identical repetitions, they are variations, each with distinct attributes and orbits, each carrying its own clues to history. Some of these companions circle close to Mars, hugging the planet in rapid loops that leave them vulnerable to eventual descent. Others linger far out, drifting on the edges of Mars's gravitational domain, where the pull of the sun constantly threatens to reclaim them. Still others trace unusual paths, their inclinations and eccentricities suggesting complicated interactions over time. Taken together, they form a layered society of orbits, where permanence and transience, order and chaos, intermix to create a system more elaborate than any prior model predicted. Every orbit mapped is a history waiting to be told. Bodies in tight circular paths may have originated in ancient impacts, thrown skyward when Mars endured colossal collisions in its youth. Fragments in elongated, unstable orbits could be recent captures, wayward wanderers from the asteroid belt caught temporarily by chance encounters. Retrograde companions, moving against Mars's rotation, tell of origins beyond, objects drawn in from deep space and forced into opposition with the rhythms of the planet. The multiplication of objects does not simply add to a list, it multiplies the number of possible narratives, the number of potential connections between Mars and the broader solar system. The practical implications for exploration multiply as well. The skies of Mars can no longer be treated as an empty backdrop. They are dynamic corridors that missions must navigate carefully. For spacecraft, even a small companion poses risk at orbital velocity, making detection and mapping not just scientific exercises, but necessities of survival. Yet the same companions that complicate navigation could one day serve as assets. Icy fragments might supply water, metallic bodies might provide construction materials, and rubble swarms could act as shields or staging platforms. The multiplication of objects redefines Mars not as a single target, but as a system of resources, challenges, and opportunities awaiting integration into the story of human exploration. The cultural weight of this shift cannot be understated. Mars has long stood in imagination as a place of desolation, symbolized by red deserts and two meager moons. That image now yields to something far more vibrant. The new Mars is surrounded by a halo of companions, a planet alive with orbital motion. This transformed vision carries through to how Mars will appear in art, in literature, in collective imagination. It will be seen not as empty but as populous, not as isolated but as connected, not as austere but as abundant. Such transformations matter, for they shape the lens through which humanity envisions its future beyond Earth. The role of 3I Atlas in producing this shift is crucial. Its instruments, designed for sensitivity beyond anything achieved before, are capable of resolving faint flickers into clear detections. The spacecraft's trajectory and stability allow it to maintain the precision needed to distinguish objects barely distinguishable from noise. Without such capabilities, the multiplication of companions would have remained hidden, their presence suspected at best. With 3I Atlas, the unseen becomes seen and Mars is recast in the light of abundance. The discoveries are as much a triumph of human engineering as they are of celestial reality. The fragility of many companions lends poignancy to the findings. Some are ephemeral, destined to last only a short while before colliding with Mars, breaking apart, or slipping away into solar orbits. Their discovery is fleeting, a glimpse of arrangements that will not endure. Others are long-lived, their paths stable over spans of millions of years. The juxtaposition of the temporary and the enduring adds depth to the multiplication, reminding observers that the cosmos is never still. To map these companions now is to record a moment in a perpetual unfolding, a constellation of presences that will look different in centuries or millennia to come. The expansion of the catalog demands new systems of classification. Mars cannot be said to have only 2 moons any longer. It has moons, yes, but also temporary satellites, debris swarms, rubble clusters, captured fragments, and wandering companions. Each category reflects different origins and dynamics, and together they form a taxonomy of orbital presence. This is not just semantic. It is essential for navigation, science, and mission planning. The multiplication of objects forces not only an expansion of catalogs, but an evolution of language, of concepts, of the frameworks through which celestial systems are understood. The discoveries connect Mars more deeply to the currents of the solar system. Every captured fragment points to exchanges with the asteroid belt. Every ejected body that slips away points to Mars's participation in the circulation of matter across space. Mars is not closed off. It is open, part of a network of gravitational interactions that link planets, asteroids, and comets into a shared dynamic. The multiplication of companions makes visible this openness, turning Mars into a node in a greater web of motion that ties the solar system together. The scientific promise embedded in these companions is immense. Some may preserve primitive material, unaltered remnants from the early solar system, carrying clues to its chemical beginnings. Others may be fragments of Mars itself, preserving geologic signatures that no surface rover could reach. Still, others may record the effects of radiation and solar wind over long spans of time. Each companion is a potential sample, and the multiplication of objects ensures that Mars now offers not only 1 or 2 sources of knowledge, but hundreds, perhaps thousands. The system has become a vast library, its shelves only now beginning to be cataloged. The philosophical implications of multiplication are equally striking. To see abundance where emptiness was assumed is to confront the limits of perception and the hubris of assumption. For centuries, Mars was pictured as simple. Now, technology has revealed its complexity. This is a pattern as old as exploration itself. The more closely humanity looks, the more richness is revealed. The multiplying objects are reminders that discovery is inexhaustible, that the universe will always outpace the expectations imposed upon it. Mars, once thought to be known, is revealed again as a frontier, its true character only now beginning to be understood. The story remains unfinished. 3i Atlas has not yet reached its closest approach, has not yet applied its full suite of instruments at their highest sensitivity. The multiplying objects already exceed imagination, but more remain to be seen. Fainter companions, smaller fragments, subtler orbits, all are waiting in the data yet to come. The abundance already uncovered is itself only a prelude, a signal of more to follow. The narrative does not conclude with what has been found, it stretches forward, open, into discoveries not yet made. Mars, once imagined as lonely, is now known as surrounded. Its skies are no longer silent but alive with motion. Its orbit no longer simple but intricate. The multiplication of objects continues as 3i Atlas advances, each moment of approach revealing more, each detection adding to the growing chorus of presences. The story is ongoing, the revelations still coming, the horizon still open. The spacecraft presses forward, the instruments continue to listen, and Mars's hidden community continues to emerge. The end is not yet written. The next transmission, the next calculation, the next orbit will bring more, carrying the story further into the richness of a universe that will never cease to surprise. The gradual approach of 3i Atlas toward Mars is unfolding with an almost theatrical pace, each day closer bringing a flood of new revelations that make the red planet appear less like a solitary body in space and more like the nucleus of a complex orbital environment. The spacecraft's instruments continue to detect and confirm new companions, each one an addition to the swelling population of bodies now known to circle Mars. This multiplication is not slowing. If anything, it accelerates, creating the sense that the closer the spacecraft comes, the denser and more intricate the Martian system becomes. What was once assumed to be sparse is revealed to be crowded, and what was thought simple is now understood to be richly textured. The sheer momentum of discovery imparts a feeling of inevitability. Mars was never truly empty, it was merely waiting for the right observer. Now, with 3i Atlas steadily refining its detections, the veil of invisibility is being torn away. Each new detection confirms that the sky around Mars is alive with motion, full of presences too faint or fleeting to have been recorded before. The multiplication of companions does not only rewrite Mars's description, it also shifts the broader framework of how planetary systems are conceived. No longer can a planet be defined only by its primary satellites. It must also be understood by the extended population of companions, temporary, permanent, fragile, and robust, that form an orbital community. The companions themselves reveal striking diversity. Some are almost spectral in their delicacy, clusters of loose debris drifting together in tenuous swarms that could scatter at the slightest gravitational disturbance. Others are compact, spinning steadily, their surfaces bright enough to reflect light in consistent patterns. There are objects so small they blur the line between satellites and dust, and others large enough to rival the smaller moons of other planets. Each companion introduces a new nuance to the system, a different scale of presence, a fresh story encoded in orbit. The multiplication is therefore not monotony, but variety, each detection expanding the scope of what Mars is revealed to host. The orbits provide further insight. Some companions hug close to Mars, circling rapidly in tight paths that may not endure for long. Others stretch outward, carving elongated ellipses that bring them near, and then send them drifting far from the planet before gravity pulls them back. Inclined orbits tilt dramatically against Mars's equatorial plane, hinting at turbulent pasts or violent origins. Retrograde companions defy the planet's rotation altogether, evidence of capture from beyond. Together, these orbits compose a living record of history. They are testimonies to impacts, captures, collisions, and exchanges stretching across billions of years. The multiplication of objects is thus also a multiplication of narratives, each orbit a clue to some long unfolding story of how Mars became what it is. The practical implications for exploration grow sharper with every confirmed companion. A spacecraft entering orbit around Mars must now navigate a far more intricate environment. Every additional body introduces potential hazards. The risks of collision are not merely theoretical, they are real, requiring unprecedented precision in flight planning. Yet these companions are not only dangers, they are also opportunities. Icy fragments could be harvested to provide water, oxygen, or even fuel. Metallic bodies could supply construction material for habitats or spacecraft. Rubble swarms, fragile though they are, might serve as protective barriers or as natural scaffolding for human-made installations. In the multiplication of companions lies not only challenge but possibility, not only complication but resource. The revelations also alter the cultural identity of Mars. For centuries, Mars has symbolized isolation, a small red world with two tiny moons orbiting in silence. That vision must now be replaced with one far more complex. Mars is not alone but surrounded. Its sky is filled with a halo of companions that shift and shimmer in constant motion. This new image resonates deeply, replacing loneliness with vitality, austerity with abundance. The Mars of imagination will no longer be pictured as stark and empty, but as enveloped by a restless population of companions. This shift matters, because the stories humanity tells about Mars will guide its ambitions, its explorations, and its sense of belonging in space. 3. Atlas itself becomes part of this story of transformation. Its instruments, engineered with extraordinary sensitivity, are doing more than recording data. They are reshaping perception. Faint flickers of light that once would have been lost in noise are resolved into orbits, into companions, into real presences. Each new detection demonstrates not only the abundance of Mars's environment, but also the ingenuity of the humans who built the spacecraft. The multiplication of objects is therefore not only a revelation of the cosmos, but a triumph of technology. Proof that human persistence can extend awareness into realms once thought inaccessible. The fragility of many of these companions adds a bittersweet quality to the discoveries. Some of the objects detected are so unstable that their time in orbit may be short, measured in decades or centuries before they fall to Mars or escape into the wider solar system. Their discovery is fleeting, a record of arrangements that will not endure. Others are far more stable, destined to remain for millions of years, circling Mars through epochs beyond human imagination. The juxtaposition of impermanence and longevity enriches the meaning of the multiplication. It is not just a matter of what exists now, but of the temporal layers of existence, the transient and the eternal mingling in the same system. The task of classification becomes more complex as the catalog grows. Mars can no longer be defined as having two moons. It has moons, yes, but also temporary satellites, captured asteroids, debris clusters, rubble swarms, and fragments of every size and type. New categories must be invented, new language devised, to describe the variety that is now evident. This is not mere semantics. It is essential for science, for navigation, and for the building of knowledge. The multiplication of objects forces humanity not only to expand its catalogs, but also to stretch its concepts, to develop frameworks that can embrace complexity without erasing difference. These discoveries also reveal Mars's role in the broader system of solar dynamics. The red planet is not isolated, but deeply entangled in the circulation of material across space. Some of the companions come from the asteroid belt, pulled inward and caught. Others will eventually be flung outward, perhaps crossing paths with Earth's orbit or drifting into the outer system. Mars is both a catcher and a releaser, both a host and a donor. The multiplication of companions makes visible this circulation, this interconnectedness of planets and smaller bodies. Mars is a node in a vast network, a participant in the shared story of solar system evolution. The scientific potential locked in these companions is immense. Some may preserve the pristine materials of the early solar system unaltered since their formation. Others may contain fragments of Mars itself, launched into orbit by ancient impacts, preserving geological records otherwise inaccessible. Still others may show how radiation and solar wind transform surfaces over long spans of time. Each companion is a laboratory waiting to be studied, a record waiting to be read. The multiplication of companions means Mars is no longer just one world to study, but many, each circling the planet with its own unique contribution to knowledge. The broader philosophical resonance is profound. For centuries, emptiness was assumed. Mars was pictured as barren, its skies sparsely populated. Now abundance is revealed, and the universe once again demonstrates its refusal to conform to human assumptions. This pattern recurs throughout history. The closer humanity looks, the more richness appears. The multiplying companions around Mars are the latest reminder that discovery is inexhaustible, that reality will always surpass expectation. The lesson is humbling and inspiring at once. Humbling because assumptions are shown to be small. Inspiring because the cosmos is shown to be endless in its gifts. And still, the story is unfinished. 3. iAtlas has not yet reached its closest pass. Its instruments have not yet achieved their highest resolution. The multiplication of companions already defies imagination, yet more surely remain unseen. Smaller fragments, subtler orbits, dimmer bodies awaiting detection. Each transmission carries the promise of new revelations, and the discoveries so far are only the beginning. The abundance already revealed is not a conclusion but a prelude, a signal of more richness to come. Mars now stands revealed not as a solitary planet but as the center of a system alive with motion. The multiplication of companions continues as the spacecraft advances, each new detection adding to the chorus of presences. The story remains open, the revelations still flowing, the horizon of discovery still stretching forward. The spacecraft presses on, its instruments listening with unbroken vigilance, while Mars's hidden companions continue to emerge. The end is not yet written. The next detection, the next orbit, the next transmission will bring more, carrying the story further into the deepening richness of a universe that refuses to be exhausted. The onward motion of 3i Atlas continues, and with it the stream of data grows denser, fuller, and more astonishing. Mars looms larger not only in the visual field of the spacecraft but also in the conceptual landscape of humanity. Each transmission reveals further companions, further evidence that the region surrounding the red planet is not barren emptiness, but an expanse of motion, crowded with bodies of every kind. The multiplication of objects does not slow, does not plateau, but builds steadily, suggesting that the system around Mars is far richer than ever imagined. The spacecraft's approach feels less like the exploration of a destination and more like entry into an ecosystem, an orbital habitat filled with presences small and great, transient and enduring, chaotic and steady. This sense of ecosystem is important. For centuries, Mars has been imagined in static terms, a planet with fixed deserts, 2 fixed moons, and a largely unchanging environment. What 3i Atlas reveals is instead dynamism. The companions are in constant flux, some drawn closer, others drifting away, still others caught temporarily in unstable orbits before they are released again. The multiplication is not merely a tally of satellites but a portrait of ongoing activity. It transforms Mars from a quiet, empty stage into a site of continual exchange, a place where gravitational, collisional, and tidal forces work ceaselessly to rearrange matter into new configurations. The range of scales is staggering. At one end of the spectrum are tiny fragments, no larger than boulders, tumbling unpredictably as they circle for brief spans before burning up or escaping. At the other end are bodies approaching the scale of small moons, large enough to maintain stable paths over eons. Between these extremes are clusters, swarms, elongated shards, and spinning irregulars, each unique in its physical makeup and orbital behavior. The multiplication of objects is thus not uniform but kaleidoscopic. Every detection is not merely another number but another kind of presence, expanding the taxonomy of what Mars hosts in its skies. The orbits themselves form a complex web that defies simplification. Some companions travel in near-perfect synchrony, their paths echoing those of Phobos or Deimos, hinting at resonant interactions. Others cross at sharp inclinations, creating the potential for collisions and fragmentations that would only add further to the population. Still others occupy chaotic orbits on the edge of stability, their paths slowly unwinding toward escape. Each orbit is a story of negotiation with Mars's pull, with the sun's influence, with the gravity of neighboring companions. These stories, multiplied across hundreds of objects, create a grand narrative of ceaseless motion, a record of how matter behaves under the intricate pressures of space. Origins remain a field of speculation that grows richer with each new detection. Some companions are almost certainly remnants of colossal impacts on Mars itself, fragments of crust and mantle thrown outward and then captured into orbit. Others are interlopers from the asteroid belt, drawn inward and caught by Mars's gravity for spans ranging from decades to millions of years. A few may be products of fragmentation, pieces broken from Phobos or Deimos during ancient collisions, creating offspring satellites that now wander in their own orbits. The multiplication of companions ensures that no single origin story can suffice. Mars's sky is a mosaic assembled from many different processes, each contributing to the population now being revealed. The multiplication of objects reshapes the future of exploration in profound ways. Missions to Mars must now account not only for the planet itself, but for the dense and varied orbital environment that surrounds it. Navigation will require precision of a new order, as spacecraft must chart courses through shifting corridors filled with companions. Yet the challenges double as opportunities. Each body represents a potential asset, a source of water locked in ice, a reservoir of metals, a natural platform for scientific instruments. The more companions multiply, the more the system around Mars appears as a field of resources awaiting careful use. Mars is not simply a planet to be landed on, but a system to be inhabited, one whose richness lies as much in its orbit as in its soil. The cultural impact of these revelations is equally transformative. Mars has always been an emblem of desolation, conjured in human imagination as a barren desert under a lonely sky. That image is now outdated. The multiplication of companions gives Mars a new character. It is no longer lonely but surrounded, no longer stark but abundant. The sky of Mars is not empty but alive with motion, filled with companions whose orbits trace ceaseless patterns overhead. This image will filter into art, into literature, into the shared imagination of humanity. Mars will no longer be pictured as austere but as vibrant, no longer as solitary but as connected. Such shifts in image are more than cosmetic. They alter the way people feel about Mars, and with that, the way they approach it. The role of 3I Atlas in this transformation cannot be overstated. It is a tool of perception as much as it is a traveler. Its instruments, capable of detecting faint flickers invisible to earlier probes, have extended human senses into realms of delicacy and subtlety never before reached. The multiplication of companions is in part a triumph of technology, proof that the human capacity for invention can reveal truths the universe has long held hidden. Without the spacecraft, the companions would remain unseen, their existence a mere possibility. With it, they become real, measurable, undeniable. The discoveries testify not only to the richness of Mars, but to the ingenuity of those who built the machine that now records it. The temporal nature of the companions adds another layer of meaning. Some are fleeting, their lifespans as satellites measured in brief centuries before they crash to Mars or drift away. Others are stable across geological timescales, destined to orbit for millions of years. To detect them now is to witness a snapshot of a system in motion, a constellation that will not be the same in the far future. This impermanence underscores the significance of observation. To see these companions is to catch a moment in a process that never ceases to change. The multiplication is therefore not just a matter of numbers, but a reminder of time, of the transience and endurance interwoven in the dance of celestial bodies. Classification grows more complex as the catalog expands. No longer is Mars a planet with 2 moons. It is a planet with moons, yes, but also with swarms, clusters, fragments, and temporary captures. New categories must be invented to account for this richness. Distinctions between stable and unstable companions, between native fragments and captured wanderers, between rubble swarms and singular bodies. The multiplication of companions requires not only new lists, but new frameworks, new ways of naming and understanding what is found. This expansion of language reflects the expansion of reality itself as revealed by the spacecraft. The discoveries also place Mars in a larger context. It is no longer possible to see the planet as isolated. Every captured asteroid links it to the belt beyond. Every ejected fragment links it to the broader circulation of matter across the solar system. Mars is a participant in a vast network of exchanges, a node in the system-wide dialogue of motion and gravity. The multiplication of companions makes this network visible, showing that Mars is not only a destination in itself, but a point of connection in the larger tapestry of solar dynamics. The companions themselves are laboratories of knowledge. Some may preserve the unaltered material of the early solar system, offering insights into conditions that existed before planets formed. Others may carry fragments of Mars's crust, preserving geological records inaccessible from the surface. Still others may demonstrate how radiation and solar wind transform matter across eons. Each companion, however small, is a vessel of information, and the multiplication ensures that the avenues for study are as abundant as the objects themselves. Mars is now surrounded by a library of natural records waiting to be read. The multiplying companions also embody a larger philosophical truth. The universe is richer than assumptions allow. For centuries, Mars was thought to be simple, a planet with two moons. Now it is shown to be abundant, its skies filled with companions invisible until the right moment. This pattern is familiar. Whenever humanity assumes it has reached the limit of discovery, the cosmos reveals more. The multiplication of objects around Mars is the latest reminder that exploration is inexhaustible, that the universe will always defy finality, always exceed expectation, and still, the process is unfinished. 3I Atlas has not yet drawn closest to Mars. Its instruments have not yet reached their sharpest resolution. Already the multiplication of companions surpasses belief, yet more remain unseen, waiting to be detected. Dimmer bodies, smaller fragments, subtler orbits, all are hidden in the data yet to come. The abundance already revealed is not the conclusion but the beginning. The system continues to open outward, the discoveries continue to build, and the narrative remains unclosed. Mars, once imagined as stark and lonely, is now revealed as surrounded, its skies alive with companions whose orbits trace unending patterns. The multiplication of objects continues as the spacecraft advances, each detection adding to the swelling chorus of presence. The story is ongoing, the revelations still streaming forward, the horizon still open. The spacecraft presses onward, instruments unblinking, while Mars's hidden community grows ever more visible. The end is not yet reached. The next detection, the next orbit, the next transmission may expand the catalog further still, carrying the story into new depths of richness, into new layers of a cosmos that refuses to be exhausted. The approach of 3I Atlas toward Mars continues to unfold like a slow but unrelenting revelation, and the closer it comes, the more the portrait of the red planet shifts in scope and meaning. The multiplication of objects in orbit is no longer a marginal note in the annals of planetary science, but a central, transformative discovery that reshapes how Mars must be understood. The once simple image of a planet accompanied by two meager moons has been overtaken by a vision of astonishing complexity. A planet encircled by a retinue of companions so numerous and varied that they form an entire orbital society of their own. Each new detection adds to the richness of this vision, and with every moment, the sense of abundance deepens. The multiplication is not just about quantity, it is about what that quantity represents. Each newly revealed object expands the horizons of what is possible in planetary systems. A lone asteroid caught in orbit speaks of capture, while a cluster of fragments speaks of collisions. A companion on a steady circular trajectory suggests stability, while one tumbling through a chaotic path speaks of impermanence. The more the objects multiply, the clearer it becomes that Mars has been the site of many overlapping stories. Stories of creation and destruction, of capture and release, of endurance and disappearance. This multiplication is not a static number. It is a dynamic archive of cosmic history written in orbits, inclinations, and eccentricities. What is most remarkable is how this growing archive shows Mars not as an isolated world, but as a node of interaction. Every companion has a tale that reaches beyond the planet itself. Some are fragments of Mars, blasted into space in the violence of ancient impacts. Others are wanderers from the asteroid belt, drawn inward by chance alignments and captured into temporary residence. Still others may be remnants of older moons that have since disintegrated, leaving behind offspring fragments that still circle the planet. The multiplication of companions thus connects Mars to processes far larger than itself, to the history of the solar system, to the flow of matter across space, to the restless negotiations of gravity and time. The variety of the companions themselves continues to defy simplification. There are solid bodies spinning with a stability that suggests deep internal cohesion. There are rubble piles, fragile clusters bound only loosely by gravity, their shapes shifting with every collision or tidal tug. Some companions reflect sunlight in steady pulses, while others shimmer unpredictably, betraying irregular surfaces or volatile activity. The system is a menagerie of forms, each unique, each demanding its own understanding. The multiplication of objects means that Mars's orbit is not simply populated but diversified, a landscape of companions as rich in variation as it is in number. The orbital patterns form a web that is intricate beyond earlier imagining. Close-in companions trace rapid revolutions, completing circuits in hours, their speeds dizzying against the backdrop of Mars's slow rotation. Farther out, Elongated paths stretch into the boundary zone where the sun's pull begins to rival Mars's, their orbits precarious, their futures uncertain. Between these extremes are loops inclined at every angle, crossings that create the constant potential for interaction, and retrograde paths that move defiantly against the planet's spin. To study this web is to glimpse a living system in motion, a dance of countless presences weaving through one another's gravitational fields, each influencing the others in subtle but ceaseless ways. This multiplication of companions forces a reimagining of exploration itself. Missions to Mars can no longer chart their paths as though moving through an empty sky. Every approach, every orbit insertion, every descent to the surface must be planned with the full awareness that Mars's skies are busy, filled with presences that could disrupt or endanger. Yet these same presences may one day provide essential support to exploration. Water-bearing companions could sustain human crews. Metal-rich bodies could reduce the need to haul supplies from Earth. Even fragile rubble swarms could be harnessed as shields against radiation. Mars's companions are not just obstacles. They are potential partners, resources embedded in the system itself. The multiplication transforms Mars into more than a world to be reached. It makes it a system to be lived with. The cultural reverberations of this discovery ripple outward as well. Mars has long held its place in imagination as a barren frontier, desolate and alone. Now that image is replaced with one far more vivid. The red planet is not a solitary wanderer, but the center of an entourage, surrounded by a restless halo of companions whose presence alters the very character of the world. This is more than a scientific revision. It is a change in myth. The Mars of stories will no longer be lonely, but populous, no longer empty, but alive with motion. In art and literature and popular imagination, Mars will now carry with it a sky filled with companions, and that shift in imagery will shape the way humanity thinks about its place among the stars. The spacecraft itself embodies the triumph of this moment. 3I Atlas is not just a machine traveling across space. It is a machine of perception, extending human senses into realms of delicacy and subtlety. Its instruments transform faint flickers into orbits, its processors trace patterns invisible to the eye, and its transmissions carry back a new universe for earthbound minds to absorb. The multiplication of companions is not only a revelation of Mars, but also a monument to human ingenuity, a demonstration of what becomes possible when persistence and creativity are applied to the challenge of seeing further. The transience of many companions lends poignancy to the discoveries. Some are bound only loosely, their time with Mars measured in centuries or less before they fall inward or drift away. To detect them now is to witness a fleeting arrangement, a moment in the long unfolding of the system. Others are stable for millions of years, enduring presences that will circle Mars long after current civilizations are forgotten. The multiplication of companions thus embodies not just abundance but temporality, reminding observers that nothing in the cosmos is fixed, that everything is in flux, that discovery is always a matter of timing as much as of distance. The challenge of classification grows steeper as the catalog expands. Mars can no longer be defined by its two primary moons. It is instead a planet with a spectrum of companions: moons, quasi-moons, temporary captures, rubble swarms, and fragments of every description. To make sense of this requires new taxonomies, new categories that can embrace complexity rather than erase it. Such classification is not merely academic but practical. For navigation, science, and exploration all depend on understanding what kind of companions populate the sky. The multiplication of objects forces not just an expansion of lists, but an evolution of thought, a recognition that the universe rarely conforms to simple binaries. Mars's companions also illuminate its role in the larger solar system. Every captured asteroid testifies to its connections with the belt beyond. Every ejected fragment demonstrates its participation in the circulation of matter across space. Mars is not isolated, but interwoven into the broader dynamics of the solar system, a participant in the flow of material that links planets and smaller bodies alike. The multiplication of companions makes visible this interconnection, turning Mars into a microcosm of larger processes, a place where the story of the solar system itself can be read. The companions are, moreover, reservoirs of knowledge. Some may carry within them the primordial materials of the early solar system, unaltered since their formation. Others may preserve the geology of Mars in fragments that no rover could ever sample. Still, others may bear the marks of radiation, solar wind, and micrometeoroid bombardment over eons, their surfaces written with records of cosmic weather. Each object is a book in the library of the system, and the multiplication ensures that the shelves are abundant, the subjects diverse. To study Mars now is not only to study a planet, but to study the companions that together form a system of knowledge. The philosophical resonance of the multiplication is profound. For centuries, Mars was thought to be simple, a barren desert with 2 moons. Now it is revealed as abundant, its skies filled with companions that had gone unnoticed until the right tools made them visible. This pattern repeats throughout exploration. Whenever the universe is assumed to be exhausted, it reveals new depths. The multiplication of companions is the latest reminder that reality exceeds imagination, that discovery has no limit, that the cosmos is inexhaustibly rich, and still the process is ongoing. 3I Atlas has not yet reached its closest approach. Its instruments have not yet applied their fullest capacity. The multiplying objects already exceed expectation, but more remain to be found. Smaller fragments, dimmer presences, subtler orbits. Each transmission carries the promise of additional revelations, and the abundance already revealed is not an end but a beginning. The skies of Mars are still opening, still multiplying, still unfolding into layers unseen. Mars, once thought of as lonely, is now known as surrounded. The multiplication of companions continues without pause, each detection a new addition to the portrait of abundance. The spacecraft presses onward, its instruments unblinking, its path steady, its mission still unfolding. The revelations stream outward, the catalog grows, the sense of richness deepens, the story is not complete. The next detection, the next orbit, the next moment of transmission will bring still more, carrying the narrative further into the inexhaustible fullness of a cosmos that has never finished revealing itself. As 3I Atlas advances, the rhythm of its discoveries begins to feel like the heartbeat of a growing reality. Each update transmitted across the void is more than data. It is a fresh layer of detail pulled from a canvas that had seemed flat for generations. What makes this constant unveiling so extraordinary is the sense that it is not just adding facts, but altering perspective itself. To once imagine Mars was to picture a world defined by its surface, by its canyons, volcanoes, and rust-colored plains. Now that surface has become almost secondary to the activity unfolding above it, in the space that surrounds and defines it as much as its ground does. The multiplying companions are like a chorus, each orbiting body contributing its own voice to the music of the system. Some voices are faint, small fragments drifting silently. Others are bold, large bodies tracing paths that dominate local space. Still others are erratic, their eccentric movements echoing unpredictability into the fabric of the system. Together they create something closer to a living pattern than a mechanical one. The discovery that Mars's skies teem with so many distinct presences transforms the sense of the planet from static to dynamic, from stillness to ceaseless choreography. Each of these companions also forces new questions of longevity. What will remain centuries from now? Which bodies will disintegrate? And which will endure long enough to welcome future explorers? The recognition that many are temporary makes the act of detection itself urgent. To find them is not merely to expand knowledge, but to preserve a record of arrangements that will vanish. It emphasizes the fragile nature of cosmic phenomena, and the importance of being present at the right moment with the right tools to catch them before they are gone. The beauty of the multiplication lies in how it reframes the identity of Mars. Instead of a quiet planet watched over by 2 irregular moons, it is now a hub of activity, a meeting point for matter shaped by gravity's constant pull. This image gives the planet a new richness, suggesting that to explore Mars is not only to land on its surface, but to immerse oneself in the complex and shifting environment of its orbit. The sense of Mars as an isolated frontier is gone. In its place rises the sense of Mars as part of a bustling neighborhood in space. The revelations thus far are immense, yet they still carry the sense of being only the beginning. With every closer step, the possibility grows that smaller, dimmer, and subtler companions remain undiscovered. The expectation now is not whether more will be found, but how many, and in what forms, and with what stories hidden in their paths. Mars's skies are no longer simple, and the unfolding of their complexity has only just begun. The approach continues, The instruments remain unyielding in their attention, and the narrative stretches forward, open, unresolved, and promising further abundance still waiting to be revealed. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on 3I Atlas approaching Mars? Will it impact space exploration? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.